You can make. No, I'm just doing that. You can make that noise, can't you? I don't know how to do the drums though. So if anyone hadn't guessed yet, we're reviewing Breaking Bad. I've got Daniel, who was here on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Review 4 years ago, as well as the Game of Thrones review, remember that, with Jake? That was when, oh, you're just gonna dox yourself? That was when, that was when you said that Euron Greyjoy was an Olympic swimmer, and that's how he found Jamie. Yeah, hang on, I just gotta fix something. There we go. Now speak.
Burgers.
Okay, yeah. Now your audio is fixed. Your audio is off for all that. So now you're gonna have to sing the Breaking Bad theme again.
Boom, 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 boom. Boom, boom.
Do you reckon that's the noises that oh, what's his name? What's the big guy from Breaking Bad called? The big black guy?
Oh, Huel.
Yeah, but you reckon that's the noises he makes in the bathroom?
Huel Babineau, yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean? But yes, Breaking Bad is a show that I have neglected for many, many years, and I think you did too.
Yeah, I think people talked about it like something that we should watch, and I just left it because I thought it was just some kind of science. I thought it was like a show where they just did experiments or something. So
I remember seeing the ads for it on TV when it was new back in the day.
Yeah, I don't remember at all.
I remember, but back then I was thinking, oh, that's too old for me.
Mm.
And then I think it was around 2017, I watched the first 2 episodes, and I was like, I don't know if I can get into this right now. Don't know what I was talking about.
I've spoken to a few people who have seen the first few, and they didn't get into it, which I just,
I think Thomas is one of them, actually.
It's a slow burner, I suppose.
Yeah, but... and then around the middle of this year, I suddenly was like, you know what? I've got this itch for some reason to watch it again. I don't know what it was. There was just something in there, and I remember you were watching it as well. And for context, people, we live in the same house now, and we did in the previous house too. So I knew you were watching it, and whenever we were at parties at our house and you were on the piss, you'd always be like, you know, sometimes on your channel, I don't know what to say, but if we did Breaking Bad, I have opinions on that show.
Wow. I can't believe I said that.
Yeah, and now 6 months later, not only have you watched the show twice, because you've rewatched it, which is an important thing with shows is rewatchability, but we're actually doing the thing that you said. We're actually doing a video on Breaking Bad.
Yep, I never thought this would be happening if you asked me a few years ago.
Yep. But the reason why, you know, at the time I was just like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. But then there was a point in this show when I realized, actually, maybe I should do a video on this show, because this show is fucking incredible. This is one of the best TV series I've ever watched in my life.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with that.
Yeah,
so,
and you know, I'm usually not one for, you know, conforming to sort of the popular opinion. I find a lot of the time that's
very true.
It does get very annoying, but when it comes to this, it's undeniable.
I agree. But the thing with me is I like a lot of different TV shows. Just like the easy ones to watch.
You like Love Island, which is like the polar opposite of Breaking Bad.
Yeah. I think I'm pretty easy to please in that avenue, but then there's also, you know, the whole Marvel franchise which I have no interest in watching. But maybe that's just because I haven't given it a chance. But
Well, some of it's very bad, but that's what I.
oh,
But this is different.
yes, this was. There's not many points where I was bored, or sometimes I fall asleep during watching shows, but no chance of falling asleep in this.
No, it's captivating. It's like it's one of those shows where you think about all of the ingredients that go into a show, into a story, and it gets pretty much everything right.
Mm.
It has great characters. It has great direction. Like, it looks amazing. Not only in terms of its scenery and its style and its camera shots and angles and close-ups and whatever, but it has a distinct tone. It has a feeling. When you're watching the show, you feel like you're in it. You can feel the hot weather. You can it's like you can feel the steam of the meth coming up. There's something about the show that it's so vivid in its visual presentation. The acting is all great. All the actors are really well chosen, especially the main characters.
Mm.
The music is so well thought of. There's bits that are really super dramatic and atmospheric, but there's also a lot of comedy music as well, especially in the early seasons.
Yeah, the comedy for me was a big part. Always
the story feels like every episode matters. The story is always constantly moving, constantly evolving. Each season has it has information that's drip fed over the course of it. It's sometimes even with it'll be the pre-title sequences, or it will just be these little bits of information at the end or in the middle.
Yeah, the pre-title sequences. That was one thing I noticed that some shows don't really do, but they always show you something and then you wonder for the whole episode, and then you get an answer at the end, which is what I like.
And one thing that I've always thought was amazing about this show, the attention to detail in the world building is akin to something you'd get in a fantasy, but it's done in a modern day New Mexico setting with normal people. And obviously a few criminals, but these are people that are realistic, that kind of could exist in our lives.
Yeah. It's very standard people.
Yeah, it's a very grounded show.
Yeah.
In the entire show, I think there's only one or two scenes where there's something that I went, okay, that's not real.
Yeah, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. But
I think Gus's death scene's the only one. That's the only one that stands out to me. I'm like, that wouldn't happen in real life.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of surreal moments, but for the most part, it's a very grounded show that you could believe.
Very much so.
And another thing is that, historically speaking, for me, I've always tended to lean more towards British television over American television, because I just think there's something more realistic about it. But Breaking Bad is not like other American television. It's so good.
Yeah, well, partially maybe it could be because they only made 5 seasons instead of dragging it out to double figures, which is what other American shows do.
Yeah, there's no filler. Every episode is important. It's such a tightly told story. One that, instead of it being dragged out, it's instead one where you don't want it to end. It feels like it goes so quickly.
Yeah. I wish it didn't end, but I think it was just perfect. Or as close to perfect as you can get.
But to be fair, we do have the ones I haven't seen yet, which is El Camino and Better Call Saul. So I've still got all that to look forward to. So it doesn't end entirely. There's still more to watch.
Yeah. And I can't wait to watch either of those again as well.
Yeah, because
I'm ready.
I mean, as a lot of people will know, this series is piloted by Vince Gilligan, who's just a fucking genius. I don't understand how he does it. And also, one thing I want to say about him and the way he's written this show, it's not really based on anything. It's an original idea he just thought of.
Yeah. It's just there's nothing else like it, really.
Like there's facets in real life that are inspired to make the show in terms of like drug dealing, mental health, like toxic relationships. Like there's all sorts of things that are built into the show that are life experiences, right? But it's not based on a story about those things. It is a story in itself that is those things. There's no book or source
There's no
material.
book.
It's literally, hey, I had this idea for a chemistry teacher and a delinquent coming together to do meth dealing. I think that could make a great show, and here's why.
Yeah.
And he just did it, and it's like one of the like closest things a TV show's ever gotten to perfect I've ever seen.
And you don't get that confusion between the book and the film if a movie was based off a book.
Yeah, no.
And there's those gaps.
Yeah, there's no like adaptation issues or anything. It's like it's been actually written to be a TV show first and foremost. But it's like it also came out, I think, at the perfect time. Because it came out right when 2008 was right when TV shows started to actually get given a lot of money. It's because of shows like The Sopranos and
yes,
Sons of Anarchy and The Wire, and then shortly after this you would get Game of Thrones as well. So
I wonder what it came out on when it first started. If it was just in America.
I remember it was a worldwide thing, but I think it was on. I think it was. I don't know if it was a subscription service thing. I think it was actually on TV channels, just late at night.
Yeah, back then we just had Sky. There was no subscription.
Well, I mean, I know in New Zealand it was on like free to air channels. But the difference is that it would come out months later.
Oh yeah, right.
Whereas these days everything is like instant.
Yeah, imagine having to wait a whole week to see the next episode. I couldn't.
Oh my god. Having to wait a whole year between seasons.
Yeah, you'd be thinking about it in bed.
But yeah, for everyone that was like 18 plus, this was water cooler television for 5 years. It was just like everyone was talking about it.
Yeah.
I mean, even recently we did an insurance thing with, it was kind of a funny story, but I won't go into it. But like, she was even saying, "Hey, Breaking Bad, I watched that. That's like the best show I've seen." It's like everyone seems to think not everyone, but everyone who's watched the show start to end seems to think it's like one of the best ever.
Yeah, even my parents liked it.
Yeah,
and they watched the whole thing.
Yeah, it's just kind of like I've been trying to like figure out in my head, why is it so universally popular? What specifically about it makes it so good? You think maybe it's because it shows so many perspectives?
Yeah, I mean, it gives you options. You can be in favor of Walt. You can like him. You can hate him. There's all these other characters that have their own sort of sub storyline.
It's like you got old people, you got young people, you got men, you got women, you got rich people, you got poor people, you've got people who hate drugs, people who love drugs, you've got police, you've got criminals, like you've got everything. There's even like racial elements to it, like the whole Mexico thing and South America with Gus. And then, there's also like it's not just a hardcore, like adult mature show. There's also a lot of comedy. There's characters like Saul, and there's jokes, and there's funny music. It's like there's so much comic relief that goes with all the serious tones as well. Like it's
Saul is a great character.
Yeah. But yeah, so I guess overall, like before we dive into the details, I think Breaking Bad is a masterpiece. And I think the two main reasons why, and this is, I think, consistent with all characters and all storylines, the two things that I think connect together to make it so great all the way through is, number one, something that I really don't like about lazy writing in TV shows is when things happen out of convenience. What Breaking Bad does is everything in the plot happens based on a decision made by a person.
Good point.
So there are so many countless examples of someone could choose to do this or this, and because they made that choice, the story goes in this direction. That happens all the time. All the time. You think about, I mean, probably one of the most key examples I can think of is when Walter has the choice of whether or not he wants to save Jane's life or let her die. That's one of the key examples. Or when, it's when the countless times it's like, do we keep going to cook meth or do we retire now? And that happens every season. It's, does he choose to lie or tell the truth? And there's so many times, and also like, at what point do I escape and use the, get a new identity? Like, there's so many different points in time when a character could have chosen to do something different, but instead they chose to do what they did. That's the one thing, and the other thing is, in respect to that, the plot all functions on cause and effect. So it's events happen, and there is an aftermath to those events that happen. It's like a big snowball, like a big ripple. Nothing happens because it just randomly occurs. It all happens because something has happened to lead to it.
Yeah.
And you can do like a big diagram of this decision was made here, which caused this person to do this, and then that leads a plane to crash and ruin everyone's lives. Like, that is a cause and effect thing you could analyze from the show if you wanted to. And that is why all the events feel so earned, and nothing feels like there's very little in the show where you'd go, hang on a second, that doesn't make sense. Why did this happen? Like, it feels so believable because it's all cause and effect, and there's no lazy shortcuts.
Yeah. And
the other thing that I haven't mentioned is this show is so good with pacing. Like, it not only is it doesn't drag itself out to the point where you're like, just, move on, come on, something's got to happen. But on the other end of that, it doesn't rush through it. It lets everything breathe.
Yeah.
Nothing feels rushed. It all feels natural. It all feels like it's going at the right speed. Everything feels well structured. There's no stupidly weird changes in tone or in, like, it all feels so purposeful, and it makes it very easy to watch because of that. Easy to process.
Yeah, I mean, for me, in summary, a short summary, I'd say compared to other shows that I've watched, maybe, for example, Game of Thrones, where I had, I struggled because there was just so many different things and I had to ask you questions all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I found it, with Breaking Bad, my questions would get answered in the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't have to ask anyone. I'd just be able to sort of work it out for myself because, I don't take everything in all the time. So that was perfect for me. And it was interesting as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess in that regard, Game of Thrones is an adaptation, and, we're talking about large books that are being squashed down to 10-episode seasons. So there's a lot of information that's going to pass you by. Whereas if you read the books, it's actually explained to you in like a really easy to understand way.
Yeah,
but it's much longer. Whereas Breaking Bad, by design, is paced the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and comparing it to other shows, there might be each episode there might be like a problem at the start of the episode, and then it would get solved at the end. But with Breaking Bad, it's not like a formula for each episode. It's all built out.
I would say there's nothing formulaic about Breaking Bad. It's very original.
Yeah, so that's another reason why I rate it so highly compared to other things that I've watched.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that's like it would be things that have come since that are copying it because of how good it is.
Yeah, and that just speaks volumes about how good it is. So.
Yeah. Right, so let's talk about the characters. Let's talk
All right.
about the obvious one to talk about first is Walter White, also known as Heisenberg, because he's the main character.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind when I think of Walt is his silly little shoes that he always has.
his silly shoes and his silly underwear and his silly car.
Yeah, he just. I love that how his character just wears whatever, and he's doing these extremely serious crimes, but he still wears the silly little shoes. And,
Yeah. It's the juxtaposition of being a cringe chemistry teacher at 50 years old. He's in a midlife crisis, and there's nothing cool about him except for the fact that he's a criminal. But that's kind of what makes Heisenberg what he is because Walter White is a really lame, nerdy chemistry teacher, but Heisenberg is a thug.
yeah, and you see at different points Walter's going between being Walter and Heisenberg, and it's interesting to see the subtle changes in his tone and his expressions.
But
and
what I love about his character arc is that in season 1, Walter White and Heisenberg are two polar opposites. In that Walter White is who he is, and Heisenberg is a character he's playing to get his way in the meth world. But by the time you get to season 5, Walter White and Heisenberg are the same thing. They are the same person.
That's a good observation.
So in a way, he became Heisenberg.
Yeah. Yeah, and you see it in points over the seasons where he's speaking to what's her name?
Skylar?
Skylar. Don't know why I can remember that. Yeah, those scenes where he's in the bedroom or he's speaking to her and saying, laying down the law.
It starts out very small, like very small little examples of him being controlling and manipulative, and they're tiny little things that you could brush away, but as the show goes on, they get more and more major, and that the lies get more twisted, and then he starts to become abusive and senile. Especially now, obviously, one of the defining things about his character that motivates him is that he has cancer. And, that's kind of his rationale for why he gets into meth, is so he wants to provide as much money as possible for his family, so when he dies, they have a good life. Which, on the surface, makes you think he's quite honorable in that respect. But the thing that twists it is the fact that he was screwed out of his business. And that's also an ulterior motive, which makes him very selfish. Because he wants to win. It's his pride and his ego and narcissism. But obviously the thing that really drives him is he wants to control every little thing in his life.
Yeah, that's one thing that bothered me was his pride and how he wouldn't accept the money from his old business partner. And putting myself in his shoes, I'd say, oh, of course I'd take the money from someone. So that's one thing that annoyed me.
He refuses it because he believes that if he takes someone else's money, then they're better than him. And it's also the money that he feels like he owns because it was his company.
Yeah. And when he refused it, in my head, I just was thinking, oh, why don't you just let it go?
He can't let it go. But that's the problem, is that someone as controlling as Walter White can't let things go, and that's why he ends up on this 2-year spiral in this show that just never ends until he dies.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fun 2 years.
Oh, fucking dramatic as hell. But there's so many times I'm just like, what the fuck are you doing, you absolute retard? Like, I get so angry at him sometimes. God.
Well, what's an example of that?
Like when he fakes going on a holiday. Like he walks into the airport and then like Mr. Bean, he walks right out.
Yeah, that was good.
It was hilarious, but I'm like, just tell her the truth. Just tell her the fucking truth. You're wasting your time.
Why tell her the truth?
Yeah, because he doesn't want. Well, I mean, one of the reasons why he can't is because his brother-in-law works for the drug and for the DEA, Hank,
Mm.
and if he's busted, he's fucked.
Yeah, when he said that he was going to visit his mum, you'd think that he would actually ring his mum and, wow, I don't know. He could have thought of a better cover story.
Yeah, I
At
guess
the
he
time,
just
probably
he
just didn't think anyone would
that's the
suspect
thing
him.
is that he early on he felt like his tracks were covered, and then over the
Mm.
course of the show he learns that they're not, and he has to start trying to do more crazy plans with more like he has to play three-dimensional chess with everyone,
Mm.
and he like really learns how to pile up more bullshit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the detail that the show starts on his 50th birthday, and they have the whole thing of him spelling out his birthday with the bacon, which is kind of it's interesting because that's a very childish thing to do, despite being 50 years old.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess it's just one of those things that happens in someone's life and they just carry it on.
Yeah.
So it means something to them.
And of course, you get it the same at 51 and then 52 at the end of the show.
Yeah.
Very good detail. But also, what they do set up in that first episode is that the food they're eating is quite cheap. This is like the lowest price bacon, and he's like, we need more money, don't we? And then, of course, the cancer thing really gets to him. And as it is at the start, he is working at that car wash, which is a massive downgrade from that business he used to have.
Yeah, he's really in the slums, and he's working in that car wash after he teaches.
That's
So
right,
he's
because
working.
and this is also like it's like a social commentary on the fact that teachers don't get paid enough.
Yeah.
Because it's fucking
Yeah.
hard work. It's hard work being a teacher. Not only to know everything, to plan hours of things to say every 5 days a week, but then to have to deal with the fact that like half or more than half of the teenagers in your class don't really give a shit about what you're saying. And they're not going to listen, and they're going to give you a hard time. Like, it's not an easy job, and they get paid piss for that.
Serious piss.
Yeah. And it's like he's passionate about it too. He's passionate about science.
Yeah. And his knowledge is just so good.
Yeah.
to be the best meth cook in the world.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
And like the fact that he is this talented and he is this poor and he's then gets cancer, it feels like the world has just thrown 10,000 assholes at him, and he feels like he feels like the world owes him something, and that's why he does the meth thing.
Yeah, well, one thing that comes to mind is if his knowledge was that good, why wouldn't he have, started something on his own in some kind of fashion related to science?
Well, I guess he did technically. It just wasn't legal.
Yeah, I mean something that was legal. Surely there'd be some kind of option there.
I mean, all it took was him being in the middle of a crisis of frustration on his birthday to see Hank's little thing about, hey, look who we caught, and it's like a big meth bust. And he sees the money that comes from the meth bust, and he goes, I could do some of that.
Yeah. Yeah, when Jesse climbed out the window naked, that was a great way to have him introduced into everything.
Yeah, I mean, I love the line that he says, you know the business, I know the chemistry, or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what else about Walt?
Well, I mean, what I meant before about him being controlling, like, they do these little moments where he like tries to fix very small things in his life that don't matter really, but he does these little things. I think one of the most notable ones is when he forces his son to drink alcohol, who's like 16, and he smiles about it because he's like, nope, that's my son, and he will do what I say because I'm his father and you are not. Like, it's like that kind of thing where he feels prideful he's in control of his son, which is like a really awful thing to do.
Yeah, that was such a hard scene to watch.
Yeah, it's cringe. It's super cringe.
Yeah.
And the obviously the episode that defines his controlling behavior is Fly, It has to be Fly.
Yeah.
The fact that he refuses to make any meth until that one fly is disposed of. Because it has to be perfect.
But then finally he gives in.
Yep.
As well. So you know that just reveals it, that he was being controlling.
Yeah.
And then he gave up after time.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great character episode, especially for Walter and Jesse. Just putting a spotlight on two of their main, sort of their why the dynamic is the way it is. And obviously Walt's chess playing goes into overdrive when Gus becomes part of the picture. Because then he becomes challenged by the biggest mastermind in the area, and he has to try and outsmart someone who is bigger and better than him at everything, except for knowledge. The only thing Gus doesn't have is he doesn't know how to make the perfect meth, which is what Walter does know.
Yeah, managing to outsmart someone who has, paid employees watching Walt all the time, that's a very well thought out plan for sure.
The fact that he poisons him with a flower. Well, he poisons the kid with the flower, which then leads on a massive trail up to when he blows him up in the old person home, and how all that leads up to it. But it all starts with that little decision to poison a child with a flower, which is really fucked up.
Yeah, you would have had to sit down and think about that and work backwards.
Yeah. But again, that just displays his sort of selfish nature, that he's willing to put a child's life in danger because it means that he'll get to defeat Gus and win.
Yeah, and he justifies it in his head because he says, oh, he didn't die. He was just severely hurt.
But that's kind of, the moral of a lot of criminals, is that the ends justify the means. Is that everything Walt does is because of what will happen at the end. Is like, well, this good thing will happen out of it, therefore it's necessary. But as Hank says in the last season, all the lives he's destroyed, all the people he's messed up, literally, like, he went through all that time, with fucked up legs that'll never be the same. All the people he's traumatized, all the stress, all the money he's stolen, like, something good came out of it, but it damaged so many other people because of it.
Yeah, the journey wasn't worth the final destination.
No. And this is kind of why I think the last episode of the show for Walter is so perfect, because in a weird way, he kind of redeems himself by doing messed up things, but all of the things that he was doing, he actually confronts. So the scene where he confronts the people who own the company that offered him money, that is a very self-indulgent moment. But specifically when he admits to Skylar he did it for himself, and he actually tells the truth for once.
Yeah.
And then obviously the fact that he saves Jesse from the Nazi gang and is willing to die for it.
Yeah, well, it would be interesting to think what would have happened if Jesse wasn't sort of near Walt when he was going to activate the gun, because he kind of ran over and tackled him, but
yeah,
in his planning he must have thought what would happen if. Well, the thing is, he may have thought that Jesse might have stayed down in the cage. But yeah, I guess it worked out.
Oh, the thing is about Walter is that he always plans for every possible scenario.
Yeah,
that he can think of. Although this is why the scene 2 episodes earlier is such a shock to him, because he didn't plan for the idea of Hank being shot. And that's why he's like, oh fuck, I can't control this situation. I actually can't decide what happens, and that's the opposite of what he wants.
And it was all from that photo of the barrel with money in it.
Yeah.
That's where he made his quick judgment.
That reminds me, actually, one of the things I love the most about Breaking Bad is how every small detail is massive significance. Tiny little things have huge impacts on the story.
Yeah.
Little lies, little photos, little bits of writing.
Yeah, second cell phone.
It's actually, the second cell phone, that was ridiculous. That's insane.
And then there's that when he mumbles something just before he goes into surgery as well.
Yep. And also when he gets drunk and he causes Hank to keep investigating.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't bear to hear someone else say that his work was not his.
Yeah, that was one of the most frustrating scenes.
Oh, dude, I wanted to fucking punch his lights out when he did that. What an idiot.
Yeah, he's far from perfect, but boy, he was such an entertaining character to watch.
100%. I'm the actor.
Mannerisms.
The actor is unbelievable.
Yeah.
He's perfect in every episode.
I was just always entertained by how his facial expressions and his body language as well. It was just always so funny to watch.
Well, what's great about him is that Bryan Cranston he's a comedy actor, but he's playing such a serious role. But he's able to really understand how to balance the tone right with the comedy.
Yeah, I believe he actually directs some of the episodes as well.
That doesn't surprise me.
Sure.
That doesn't surprise me.
Could be right.
He's a very intelligent actor.
Yeah,
but like you say, it's the facial expressions, it's the body language. all those times he's concerned and he opens his mouth, he does that silly face he does.
Yeah, and he grits his teeth.
Yeah.
Waves his hands around.
Yes, when he waves his hands around.
Yeah, his eyebrows.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good very, very entertaining.
Yep. Yeah, he's got such good range, he can do anything. I mean, what's great is that you feel like you know everything about this person.
Yeah.
When I'm watching the show, I forget this is a fictional character. I feel him as if he's real, as if he's a real person I've met.
Unbelievable that he could be a real person.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a reason why this show has so many memes that have come out of it too, because it's got so many memorable moments.
Yeah, there's so many iconic scenes that keep popping up on my TikTok, and I watch them over and over.
Yeah, there's that scene, I think it's in, if I remember correctly, I think it's in season 2, when Jesse nearly punches Walt dead, I think, or it's season 3. I can't remember which one it is. Which one it is.
Yeah, they're fighting.
They're inside the van.
House, right?
No, they're in the van.
Oh.
They're in the van, and Jesse punches him to the ground, and he's like bleeding. And he has the choice to kill. He has the choice to kill Walter, but he chooses not to.
Is that after he leaves the keys in the ignition?
Yeah, I think it might be. I think Walter says you're a useless junkie or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He left the keys in the ignition and the battery went dead. Oh, that would be ridiculous. And then he somehow manages to make a battery out of bloody coins or something.
Oh, that was ridiculous. I couldn't believe that.
Showing his elite knowledge once again.
Yeah. It's just insane capability for survival.
I think it was sponges as well. Sponge.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And of course, another great scene I want to bring up, I think it might be when he had his 51st birthday at the start of season 5. It's when Walt Jr. goes to his house and he has that big breakdown. And he's like, it's all my fault.
That was after he just got beaten up as well.
Yeah, that's when he got punched out by Mike, wasn't it? At the bar. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he has sits down with Walt Jr. and really opens up.
Yeah.
Except for the illegal part.
Yeah, he can't tell him like all the context, but it's basically him thinking back on the last year of his life, going, "What the fuck have I done?" But also, what I love about it is that he completely sees it in a different way to the way his son sees it, because Walt sees it as, I don't want you to see me weak and beaten up because I need to be, I have to be proud dad or whatever. It's like he doesn't want his son to see him in this condition, but his son doesn't care about that. He's like, well, I don't want to see you the way you've been for the last year. Your behavior. And Walt gets confused by it. He's like, hang on a second, I was doing this for the right reasons.
Yeah, speaking of Walt Jr., that brings me to another part that I loved was when he set up the GoFundMe or whatever it was called.
Oh my god!
Walt, and
I forgot about that.
Walt's reaction when he would stand at the door and he sees the noise of the money going up, and he's like, "Oh yeah, very good, very good."
That was one of the most fucked up things he ever did to his son. Is that he set up a fake charity, so his son thought he was helping him, but he wasn't.
Yeah, the whole ordeal behind that, and his reaction to his son, and Skylar had to say to him, "Oh, you need to be more happy about this," and he's like, "Oh, yes, yes," in a fake kind of way, and yeah, I found that part so funny.
Yeah. The whole thing of the money laundering gets so overcomplicated. Like, it's crazy the lengths they go to, and just Jesus, all the stupid things they have to do to make their money seem like it's legal.
Yeah, I never really knew about money laundering until I watched this show, and it's something that has to be done very carefully, and you can't rush it, and you can't put too much money through it at one time.
It happens in real life, but I think this is a very extreme version of it. Because by the time they've processed all that money, they have that big storage unit, just a big pile of cash.
Yeah, well, that was unprocessed money, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. So that was all the money because it was at that time when they were doing the cooks in the houses that were infested.
That's right.
And so the money was fast coming in, but Skylar couldn't. There was so much coming in that she couldn't.
Just too much excess.
Process it all. Yeah. So yeah, that was unlaundered money. Because all of that was what was put into the barrels, and it was like $80 million or something like that.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he did well. Lots of earnings.
He did. The problem is with Walter is that he did too well. He didn't drop out early enough. As soon as he escaped Gus, he should have called it.
Yeah.
But that's when everything went shit south.
The problem was his mindset was like, we can make all this money, why stop now? When he should have put himself back in his shoes where he just needed the money at the time, and if he just left the $5 million. Yeah, if you take the $5 million, that's more than enough. Like, when he first started, he needed he set his number at about 700,000. And so, if only he had have been able to think back to that time.
Yeah, but he got so carried away that he realized, oh, I can use this money to overthrow the people that took my company away from me.
Yeah, and even when he stopped cooking, he wanted to make sure the blue meth was off the streets. So he was just so worried about his empire and reputation in an illegal business where he couldn't have even imagined caring about something like that before he had cancer.
That's right. And that heartbreaking moment when he's done all of this for his son mainly, but also for his daughter and his wife, but mainly for his son, Walt Jr. is the primary focus. He has all this money, and Walt Jr. doesn't even want it.
Yeah, when he rang Walt Jr. and he was at school, that phone call was just heartbreaking.
Yeah, because he's like, this can't have all been for nothing.
Yeah,
because you can't. That's the thing is like, obviously that amount of money is huge, but the damage that he did to Walt Jr.'s life during making that money and his mother's life and whatever,
that can't be fixed by money.
That can't be fixed with money. Like, he's never gonna forget that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't understand how he could have thought Walt Jr. would ever forgive him after finding out that he was involved with Hank's death.
Mm-hmm.
But he still tried to give him the money.
But that's the thing, right? With Hank's death, with Walter, is that by that point he could try and explain his way to why it happened and that he tried to stop it, but no one's gonna care. No one's gonna believe anything he says because he spent so long. He spent so long lying and bullshitting to people that now, if he actually tells the truth, who's gonna believe him?
Exactly.
You know. Yeah.
A very complex character.
Very. You know, there's the key moments like when he thinks that the money is going to get him out of trouble, and then he realizes that Skylar spent it all on Ted, and he just laughs in his in his basement.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, is that scene where he says, "I am the danger."
Yeah, that's another iconic one.
Yeah, then of
it's
course
just all gone to his head.
Yeah, and of course, Heisenberg, you goddamn right.
Yeah. He knew how to cut a promo.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah. And also the whole thing of him bugging Hank and Jesse with that little tracker thing. Oof, that was pretty despicable. That's like that's like one of the most untrustworthy things you could do to people who trust you.
Yeah, the abuse of Jesse's trust that he continued to abuse.
He fucking lied to his face about killing Mike. He lied to his face.
It's hard to decide and how he exactly thought of Jesse, if he actually cared about him or if he just saw him as this piece of the puzzle that he needed.
Well, he did the thing that a lot of narcissistic people do. He cared about what Jesse provided for him.
Mm.
And in a weird way, I think he did care about Jesse as well, but it wasn't enough. Like, the amount that he cared about Jesse the person was not equivalent to the selfish desires he had to use him.
Mm.
And there's a reason why. I think the key detail that explains this is there's a reason why he likes Jesse more than Gale. Because Gale Bedecker could also give him all the assistance he needed to make the money, but Jesse provided things for Walter that Gale couldn't.
Yeah. That's an interesting one to think about. What were the reasons that Jesse... Well, why did he prefer Jesse over Gale? But
it's sort of multifaceted. So the first thing is that Gale can be instructed, but he can't be manipulated.
That's a good point.
I mean, he can be manipulated by Gus, but that's a different kind of thing. Like Gus is only doing that because he's his boss
Mm.
and he has actual power over him. Walter knows how to get Gus to do what he wants in a lab, but it's everything that goes outside of the lab that is why he can manipulate Jesse. So he can get Jesse to do things that are extracurricular, which is interesting because he's a high school teacher. But the other thing is that he actually cares about Jesse, and like in a weird way. But the problem is that he cares about him to a point where he wants to control Jesse's future as opposed to wish him the best, which is why he lets Jane die, because he thinks Jane's a bad influence on him.
Mm. And because Jane, it probably felt like Jane was going to steal him.
That's right. Yep, it was jealousy.
Mm.
And Walter White is a very jealous person.
Maybe he thought of Jesse like a son that he never had. That's just, doesn't have cerebral palsy. Who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know. And probably not, though, because I feel like he's still very proud of Walt Jr.
He
He
is
never
really,
showed
yeah.
that he was embarrassed
He is.
by his,
Yeah, it's
which is a nice
it's
touch.
I guess maybe Walter White looks at Jesse and goes, I can change that guy.
Yeah. Definitely.
It's very complex.
And he'd always undermine him for relapsing or for just smoking crack in general.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe he thought that he'd be able to get him to stop.
Yeah. There's a bunch of other Walter scenes that I'd like to talk about, but I think we should probably talk about other characters because I think they are more relevant to them.
Mm.
So, whoa. Let's talk about Jesse Pinkman.
Jesse Pinkman is a very funny man.
You know what's interesting about Jesse Pinkman? Apparently, in the original draft for the first season, he was going to die in the last episode.
Of season 1?
Yep. He was going to die in the last episode of season 1.
Wow.
And then Vince Gilligan thought, actually, this character is really interesting. I think I'm going to keep him. And he becomes like the second lead character.
Wow. Yeah, because his involvement in season 1, it's not, well, it is quite heavy towards the second half, at least.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's very involved in the meth side of it.
Yeah.
But I honestly couldn't see the whole Gus saga going down without Jesse. He's so important to it.
Yeah, he's a massive part of it.
Yep.
The whole point where Walt stays alive Jesse stays alive because they need Walt, and then it turns vice versa. Jesse's protecting Walt from Gus as well.
What I think is so interesting about Jesse Pinkman is, despite the fact that he's a delinquent, the one thing he can't do without severe pain is kill people.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, especially kids. Thinking about, he cares so much about kids.
Yep.
When you think of a person that smokes crack all the time, you just think they wouldn't care about anything. They would only care about how they're getting their next bag of drugs.
That's the surface level interpretation, but then you see Jesse's actual backstory about his conservative parents and how they're too strict and they expect nothing but the best. And so naturally Jesse is only going to be the opposite of that because he feels like he's let down to his family. He even feels belittled by his younger brother, which is quite sad.
Yeah, when he went and visited, and it's like his younger brother was just better than him at everything.
I think for me, the season that really defines Jesse's character is season 2. Firstly, because you have the episode where he goes to the meth house with the kid and the ATM machine. That's a huge thing for him. That's the one, I think that might be the season where Combo gets killed, unless it's season 3. I can't remember. It's one of those two.
Yeah, I think Combo does get killed in season 2.
Yeah, but obviously the most important aspect is that is the season with Jane in the second half, I think.
Yeah.
That is, and also that is also when he witnesses he witnesses death. He's asked to kill by Walter out in the desert, but he doesn't. And that's when Hank nearly catches both of them. And that's when they meet the guy.
When they're at Tuco's house.
Yeah, and that's when they meet. What's the guy in the wheelchair called? I can't remember his name. The old fuck.
God.
You know who I mean.
Ding ding ding.
Yeah. Wheelchair guy.
Oh my God! What's his
also,
name?
The actor's name is Mark Margolis. What's the character's name?
Bloody
Hector. Hector
Salamanca.
And also, you want to talk about a guy who knows how to act? Fucking hell, that guy is a great actor. Jesus Christ. He doesn't say a word. He doesn't say a word through the whole show. And he's so good.
Yeah, when he moves his lips like that. Imagine being the cameraman and you try not to piss your pants while he does that.
Like that whole scene where they poison the food and he's looking at it.
Yeah. Oh, that was excellent.
Yeah.
God, and Jesse went and said, "Oh, we put chili powder in this batch," and Tuco immediately didn't have it because he just happened not to like chili powder. That was so frustrating.
Hector is definitely one of the funniest characters in the show. He's so good.
Yeah.
Hilarious Scorn. But but I think the most satisfying thing about Hector is that in season 4 he actually teams up with Walter to kill Gus. That is so good.
Yeah.
The fact that it's revealed that in the past Hector was responsible for the murder of someone that Gus cared about.
Yeah, I believe that was Gus's brother or business partner. I'm not sure.
Yeah, the important thing is that he was traumatized by that event, seeing his friend die at the hands of Hector, which it gives you a sympathy behind the villain of the story, and then it makes, by proxy, it actually, at the moment when Gus is taken out of the story, Walter White becomes the villain of the story. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, it's like
really interesting. Yeah, passing the torch in a way. But as I was getting back on track, for me, one of my favorite things in this show is the storyline with Jesse and Jane. I loved all of that. I thought it was I don't think
I watched that. Did I?
No. Watched the first 2 seasons with someone else, but that for me was really. I already loved Breaking Bad before it, but that storyline with Jesse and Jane was really what cemented the show for me. I thought, like, holy shit, this is a romance I've never seen before. I've never seen a romance like this one. It was so unique the way that they met through. I believe they met through the counseling sessions, right? Is that correct?
Nah. So when Jesse got kicked out of home, he found the flat that he moved into.
That's right. That's right. She was his landlord.
The landlord, or her dad was.
Sorry, I'm thinking about the other one from later. No, so she was his landlord for his new place. This was before he bought his parents' house with the meth money, which was hilarious. But yeah, she's his landlord living next door, and obviously, he really likes her. She's reluctant because she's sober and has been for a while, and she used to be into heroin, which heroin is arguably even worse than meth in some ways. It's a very dangerous drug.
Yeah, well, the fact you inject it in your arm that gives me the shivers.
Yeah, it's one of the worst drugs in the world. Heroin is.
Yeah, well, the fact that when you're sleeping afterwards, if you have to go on your side, otherwise you could risk choking.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's very dangerous.
Yeah. So yeah, basically Jane, in a way, is such an interesting relationship because she is exactly the person that Jesse is looking for. She's exactly the
Mm,
kind of partner that Jesse wants and needs. But because of Jesse's influence, he encourages her to break her sobriety.
mm,
And a lot of that is of rebellious nature because Jesse rebels against his parents, and Jane's father also is very in support of her sobriety. And he comes across as very overprotective at first, but then after she's dead, you completely understand why he was like that.
yeah,
And
yeah.
one of my favorite scenes in the show is that scene when Walter talks to her dad in the barn. They don't know who each
Mhm.
other are.
Yeah, what a coincidence.
That is a fucking incredible scene. I
Mm.
love it.
Yeah, and
Um,
they talk about space, and then
yeah,
obviously the plane crashes
the
from
plane crashes.
space.
Yeah, that my blood was pumping during that whole finale when the plane crashed. That was
Mm.
insane. Um, and the fact that throughout the whole of that season they had shown like foreshadowing of the bits in the swimming pool of the
Yeah,
plane.
and you have no idea. No, I think you don't know there's a plane crash until right at the end.
Yeah, yeah. You
I
just see
worked
weird
it
little
out.
things and weird colors, and and there's like a
Yeah,
weird like colored horse, and you're like, what
the
the fuck is
eyeball.
this? The eyeball. Oh my god, the eyeball, dude,
Mm,
the eyeball, and like the twins and everything. That was just, again, as I said, the small details in the show. The eyeball is one of them, and the way Walter White nearly died until Gus called it off.
mm. Yeah, just the whole thing with the debris falling in the pool and they're drip feeding it to you over the season. I found that so puzzling. I really wanted to know what it was all about, and then when the
When it was revealed, I was just like, that is
oh,
genius.
that was like a mega climax.
Yeah. Yeah, the end of season 2 is one of the best parts of the show for sure.
Mm,
It's a hell of a finale.
mm,
But yeah, the Jesse Jane relationship was fantastic. Both the actors were just, they had such good chemistry. They felt so natural together. The fact
felt
that
very organic.
I love the bit when Jane blackmails Walter. She actually knows how to
Mm.
get Walter out of Jesse. That
Mm,
is, yeah, and that like foreshadows the fact that Walter lets her die.
yeah,
And again, as I said at the start about characters making choices, they chose to take that last bit of heroin. You know, they could have not done it. They could have taken the money and, as they said, gone to New Zealand and become artists. That was a great little moment. But then they said,
mm,
oh, we might as well finish it off. And that's what killed her.
yeah, yeah. It was a shame, especially for Jesse. I think he was so that just left such a hole in his heart for the rest of his life.
Yep. Yep.
And
Especially
then,
like in the third to last episode of the show when Walter says to he confesses, I let Jane
yeah,
die. That scene,
that is a
that was
shot
like,
to the heart.
oh, like I don't think I've ever like there's moments I've loved Walter and there's moments I've hated Walter in this show. I don't know if I've ever hated Walter White more than that moment. That was fucking horrible.
That's arguably worse than torture. That's yeah. That was just. I imagine how Jesse felt is how he looked when he was kept in that cage.
Yeah,
That's how he felt inside.
yeah. Um, the whole side thing of Gus trying to like kiss Jesse's ass to get him away from Walter. All the missions with Mike. The thing of like Jesse's been like to. I love the scenes when Jesse says to Walter, "Yeah, well, guess what? This guy thinks I'm special and thinks I'm better than you, so fuck off." Like, I love that whole thing of Jesse thinking that someone actually finally values him in his life, but it's not true. He's just being manipulated again.
Yeah, that was brilliant. When yeah, he would leave Walt to do the cook, and he'd say, "I've got other important stuff to do with Mike," and
Yeah,
he really thought he was the man. And it took a serious conversation from Walt to start putting doubts in his head about that.
yeah,
Otherwise, he just would have being able to be so easily manipulated into
Yep.
whatever Gus wanted to shape him into.
One of the most messed up things the show recurringly does, and it's always with Jesse, is that he has to melt dead bodies with acid.
Yeah.
It obviously starts like the famous start is in the first season when he melts someone in his bath and the bath falls through the ceiling.
Mm. Yeah, that pissed me off when Walt told him to get that specific container that evades corrosion, but of course he just thought the bathtub would be okay because he's just so dumb. Yeah, that was annoying, but it is what it is.
I also love how there's two main scenes between Jesse and Skylar in the show. The first one is very early on when she's like, "I know you sold weed to my husband," which is one of the funniest scenes in the show. It's so funny. There's no idea what's really happening. And then the other one is in season 5 when he's at the dinner table and he's trying to make small talk.
Brilliant. Yeah, he's like, "Yo, this broccoli is so good." And that was right in the time when Skylar and Walt were having a big, standoff between each other as well.
She was walking into the pool to get Hank and Marie's attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that first scene as well. That was when Skylar came through his gates. I think he had the dead bodies behind the minivan.
Yeah.
Or the RV, I should say.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a very tense moment.
Yep.
For Jesse.
Yeah. Another comedic duo that I thought was fucking great was Jesse and Saul.
Yeah.
Because Saul is like, they're so opposites. Like Jesse is so like nihilistic and down on life and thinks everything sucks, and then Saul is so optimistic and always coming up with plans, and he's just like, well, what if you do this or what if you do that? And he's just like, shut the fuck up. And then Saul's like, you're missing out, kid.
Saul would be handing Jesse all the answers, and then Jesse would throw it all out the window.
But then
Saul would be...
whenever Jesse gets in trouble with the law, fucking Saul cracks his fingers and goes, all right, here we go. Fucking time to defend your ass again.
Saul would have just gotten so sick of Jesse's stupidity, and Jesse always wanted to do the opposite of what he's being told by Saul.
That's because he's a rebel.
Just because he's just.
I mean, one of my
open your eyes.
One of the funniest moments in the show is when Jesse falls through the Portaloo ceiling.
Yeah, that was brilliant. Yeah, that was his life was at an all-time low.
Yeah, it was like something out of Jackass.
He slept in a bloody puddle of Portaloo blue crap.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That whole storyline with the car yard as well, and then when Hank came up to the RV, and Jesse called the thing, like he made Saul tell Hank that his wife was in danger, so he would go away. And then Hank finds that out, and Hank busts up Jesse, and it's all Walter White's fault that it happens.
Yeah, because Walt was the one orchestrating that, but then Hank thinks it was Jesse.
Yeah.
So he cut all the flack from it.
Yeah, Walter made sure to protect himself. It didn't last though, because eventually Walter White got found out. And there's that scene we'll get to it later. But yeah, Jesse obviously gets he gets beat up a lot in this show.
He's taking a fair few beatings.
Yeah. And it seems like every season Jesse reaches a point where he's just like, I do not want to do this anymore, and then he gets roped back in by the devil.
Yeah, that's one thing that I noticed was there was low points and high points, and it would go up and down like a stock graph, and there'd be points where him and Walt are working like clockwork, well-oiled machine, and then something would happen, and Jesse would end up hating Walt, and then Walt would have to find out some way to, convince him to like him again, and that was just up and down.
Gaslighting mainly.
Yeah, in my head watching that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is just crazy. Jesse's mental state after all of this, after all that he's going through. I don't know how his brain even has the capacity for Walt's bullshit anymore.
Yeah. That's why you get that scene where he goes into his house with the gasoline and he's like, "You can't get away with this!"
Yeah, that was pure just anger, and yeah, the way he acted in that scene was awesome.
Yeah.
Like,
and there's that scene when he busts into his house and points a gun at his forehead.
Yeah, the first time I watched that, I honestly thought he might have just shot him.
Yeah, it's hard because like Jesse doesn't want to kill people. He hates killing people. When he kills Gale, that like ruins him, because after that he goes into that spiral where he invites all those weirdos to his house and he has parties every day.
Yeah, that period where he just wanted to keep the party going, and then his friends Skinny Pete and Beaver, what's his name? Beaver?
The ones that always talk about fucking Star Trek and all that shit.
Yeah, they're always talking about some stupid game.
And Jesse's just like, I don't care. I don't give a fuck about what this conversation
like,
is.
Yo, make sure there's pizza, make sure the music's still going when I come back. And he just wants the party to go on forever.
I mean, yeah, the really like most depressing shot is when he's staring at the flashing lights in his speaker and he's just staying there for ages, just looking at it.
I remember there was a point where everyone was just asleep on his lounge floor, and he started throwing like $100 bills on the floor.
Yeah, it was like he was throwing fucking bread at ducks or something.
That was such a random little event as well.
He stops. I mean, when that guy steals his money and he looks like he doesn't give two shits, he's just like, whatever. Yeah. He's so he's just so depressed.
He just doesn't care.
And he's like sleeping with random people he doesn't know, and he's just like, whatever.
Yeah, having all those people in your house and you've got, what, $5 million or something in your drawer upstairs. That's unthinkable for me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, because his life's just chaos. He doesn't know what to do.
Yeah. He's lost. He's very, very lost.
Yeah, and of course, he has that second relationship with that girl who has the kid Brock, and
like Andrea.
And Andrea. Yeah, that's right. He meets her at the
meeting,
the counseling. Yeah, and I love the speech he gives at the counseling of like, at what point do you just stop forgiving me? Like, at what point do you stop? Like, why can't you just fucking admit that I am a bad person and you don't care?
Yeah, that like Scuba Steve dude running the.
And he's like, oh, we all have reasons why we did the things we did, And he's just like, well, I killed an innocent person who did nothing wrong. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and he goes off at the guy about killing his son. I think he ran over his son.
Yeah, ran him over. Yeah. That was by accident,
Yeah, but the way that Jesse, puts it in his face, like, how do you forgive yourself for that? I can't imagine ever asking someone something like that.
Well, yeah, I have met someone. My dad knows someone, and in Tauranga, that had five kids and accidentally ran one of them over with the tractor on a farm. But you have to, you just got to find a way to move on with your life somehow.
Yep.
But Jesse murdered Gale point blank, unprovoked, completely undeserved.
And in that short, he only knew him for about 10 seconds.
Yep.
But he would have seen that Gale was like the most harmless thing ever. Like, he listens to that weird ass music.
Yeah.
Why does this guy deserve to die?
He only did it because someone else forced him to. They manipulated him to.
Mm. Well, in his head, it was either this guy dies or Walt dies.
Yeah, but really, in actual fact, the person who was doing more crimes was Walter, not Gale.
Mm.
But he had been manipulated into being loyal to Walter to a fault, and he did all his dirty work for him because Walter didn't want to be discovered. He didn't want Hank to find him. Let's say if Walter went to Gale's house and shot him, then maybe Hank would have found him. So he used Jesse to be his criminal.
And that just makes me think of something. All the times early on in season 1 and 2 when Jesse would ring Walt's landline phone and he'd be like, "Why are you ringing my fucking landline?" that was some of the funniest stuff.
And like his answer phone where it's just like, "What up, bitch?" or something like that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, all the times when they have to be secret and make secret phone calls, those were the
best. And yes, that'll be a large deep dish picture.
Yeah, he has to like pretend it's someone else. That's so funny.
Yeah. Jesus. Also,
the telemarketer on the phone.
Has there ever been a TV show that has utilized a swimming pool at a house more than this one?
Oh my gosh, they're always There's the debris coming in.
There's the scene the scene where Walter makes his son drink by the swimming pool.
Yeah, drinking. Sometimes Walter's just standing out there by himself.
And then there's the swimming pool in Mexico as well. At the gang house.
Yeah. At what's his name? Don someone. Don Eladio, that's his name.
Yeah.
Don Eladio's house.
That was another great actor. He was barely in the show, but he was so good.
Oh, you know when he was in the scene, it was like tense business going on.
Serious drama. And like every time they would smile at each other, it was there's so much like something under it. Like this is so fake. You can just feel it.
Yeah, that was I really liked that actor. Just his look.
Yeah,
it portrayed the character so well.
Yeah, like there was just like nothing but pure and utter hate for this man from Gus. Yeah.
But yeah, back to Jesse.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much. I mean, his dynamic with Mike is great because Mike's so straight to the point, and Jesse just trying to Jesse gets so easily bored. He seems like he probably has ADHD, to be honest.
Yeah.
But Mike is just like, just sit down and shut up, kid.
Yeah. That when he had to sit in the car that whole day, and it has that compilation of Jesse just trying to entertain himself in the passenger seat.
Yeah.
And Mike can just sit there and drive all day.
It was a very like, are we there yet kind of dynamic.
Yeah, and at one point Jesse had that car that right at the start his car had the hydraulics.
Yeah, that's right.
And I remember one of the episodes started with the car jumping up and down.
Yes.
And when I first saw that at the start of the episode, I almost found it scary or unsettling. Just the start of that episode with the car, for some reason.
Because you were thinking like, why is the car doing that?
Yeah, I was like, why is it moving like that? Why is it making that sound? And obviously it gets explained, but I think just the idea of starting the episode with that, it's so unique, and it made me feel something that I don't usually feel.
What's great, I mean, consistently about the pre-title sequences in this show is it makes you ask questions that you think about as you're watching it. Another thing this show does incredibly well is subtlety. Like the way that there are certain scenes, I think the biggest example of this is when Hank's lying in his bed reading the notes about the meth stuff between like Gale and Walter, and there's no music. He's just quietly sitting there in his bedroom reading it. But the drama of that scene is massive because we know what he's looking at.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, that's probably more in your wheelhouse of noticing things.
Yeah, well, I'm
I
just sort of
think I'd pick
explaining
up
why.
on it.
I'm
Yeah.
explaining why it works, and like if that scene had big dramatic music, it wouldn't work. It'd be so weird and out of place. But because he's just sort of quietly sitting there reading something very important, us as the audience are like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah, it gives you, as the audience, it gives you a moment to actually react rather
Yeah.
than being told how to react.
I mean,
Sort of thing.
the amount of times that I've seen the credits roll on this show, and I feel like all the wind has been sucked out of me, is like it's countless.
Yeah, it always ends when you want it to keep going.
Yep, it's very addictive,
Mm,
but that's a good thing for this show.
fuck yeah.
And of course, it all gets paid off. I mean, they do that scene where another one of the women that Jesse loves gets killed. This time he has to watch it happen. He watches his girlfriend get shot in the head.
Yes, that was just savage.
Another scene of subtlety as well. Like it wasn't big zoom, big dramatic trumpets. It was just far away in the distance. You just hear poof, and that's it. Just crack, head to the ground.
Yeah. It just, yeah, I don't think it needs to be. I think it was just, yeah, perfect as it was.
Yeah, and of course the last scene where he escapes and he's so like the complex feelings of he's so happy that he got out, but he's so sad that his life is so fucked.
Yeah, when he slams the accelerator on the El Camino.
Yep.
And it shows a shot of his facial expression, and he's like gritting his teeth and wincing, and yeah, that was.
He's like,
crazy.
I can't believe I got out of this, but also fuck this. This has been horrible. But like, there's just so much going on in his head. You just like don't know what he's gonna do. Which, funnily enough, is probably makes for a great cliffhanger to El Camino, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That one scene makes people want to watch that film.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I certainly want to. So at some point after this video, we'll probably get into that.
I'm ready.
Yeah. It's El Camino first, then Better Call Saul, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Because Better Call Saul happens like before Breaking Bad.
Well, it starts before, I know that.
And then it sort of intertwines a little bit, but yeah, you go El Camino, which happens after Breaking Bad, and then Better Call Saul is what you'd want last.
What I understand about Better Call Saul is that in terms of like the events as they happen, it's before Breaking Bad, but you don't want to watch it before Breaking Bad.
Correct, because
it's intended
characters.
Yeah, it's intended to be watched after.
Yeah, and some of the Breaking Bad characters are involved, and you kind of, if you had watched it first, you wouldn't really understand why some characters are doing some things.
Yeah, so it sort of like travels back in time a bit, which that is a signature trait of a bunch of very famous writers and directors. Quentin Tarantino does this a lot with his films, where he'll tell a story out of order intentionally. So there is a bit of that. But yeah, I think Jesse is awesome. I'm very glad that Vince Gilligan decided to keep him on for the whole show, because him being so important to the Gus saga was extremely satisfying that he was part of that. And he makes for such a good opposite to Walter. And
yeah, they make a good duo when they're on. They're on.
Yeah,
make a lot of money.
Yep. Now let's talk about who I think the general public considers to be the most hated character in the show, but someone I actually think is really interesting. And probably the reason why they're hated is because of circumstance or just general, like...
I'm guessing you're talking about Skylar.
Yes, I am. Like, I know a lot of people hate Skylar, but I think there is there seems to be a common theme with a lot of TV shows that, like, for some reason, whatever it is, it's like the female character that opposes the male lead is often disliked. It's the same thing in Game of Thrones with Catelyn Stark as well. A lot of people really don't like Catelyn because she opposes Jon Snow, you know, and what Rob wants and what Ned wants or whatever. But like Catelyn Stark, I think Skylar's a great character. I think she's a big challenge for the story. And she weirdly, even though for a lot of it she's a victim, she's just as fucked up in the head as Walter White is, which is why they make for a great marriage. At first they seem like really normal people, but it's once the situation gets out of hand that it really unwinds all of their worst sides.
Yeah, I definitely would say that I don't hate Skylar. I think, you know, all of the things that she does are calculated, and they when I think about it, you know, I can justify it in my head. And I think people just choose to hate her because, you know, oh, Walt's the man and she's opposing him.
But the thing that people forget is that as cool as Walter White is, it was all his fault. He's wrong. Walter White is a bad man.
And she's just doing the best. She's doing the best she can in a position where she's between a rock and a hard place, really.
She was also in a fucking toxic marriage while she was pregnant and looking after a son with cerebral palsy.
Yeah, her life's already been stressful having to bring up a child that's disabled.
Yeah.
So.
And being pregnant. And her husband is a meth dealer who's constantly lying to her all the time and trying to control her.
Yeah. And then she had to deal with the whole situation of Ted not wanting to pay that massive fine.
Oh,
that was actually ridiculous.
Oh my god! He's the writing and the acting is brilliant, but if we want to talk about a character that makes me fucking fill with blood and fury, it's fucking Ted. Jesus Christ, he is hilarious, but a bit like it's interesting how she's attracted to men with pride. Ted is also very prideful of his like money, but in a different way to Walter. But I guess the difference is that Walter White is really intelligent, whereas Ted's a fucking dumbass.
Yeah, well, I think he summed up pretty well when he ends up basically ruining his life when he trips over the rug.
Yep.
And becomes a vegetable.
I love the fact that in this show, the most normal life things can have such a massive impact on you. He fucking trips on a rug.
To be fair, I'd probably trip on a rug if I was running away from Huel.
That's right. But yeah, I think the most despicable thing about, like, the thing that Ted that really makes it, that really hits it, is the fact that Skylar gives him all that money to try and fix his life, and he ends up buying a fancy car with it.
Yeah, so he buys a car, and then he's planning to restart his business that's already in a massive hole.
Yeah.
And not pay off the fine.
Yep.
Which is just like unfathomable.
Yeah.
But you know, he's obviously got a serious problem.
He really
and I think
does.
he mentioned he's like, oh, my employees, they have families that need the money. It's like, you need the money. Pay the fine.
Fucking protect yourself before you can protect others. You know, it's like what we learned with first aid, like Doctor's ABC, like danger is the first thing. Make sure that you're safe before you help anyone else. It's like you can't help these other you can't help these other families if you can't help yourself.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the whole scenario where Skylar went and cheated with him, I think it was justified.
It was well timed as well in terms of where Walter was at that point. He'd done so much gaslighting to her that she felt like she was losing her husband at a point where she needed him because she had a new child. And she was just desperately starving for some kind of actual, like, you know, actual man to care about her.
Yeah, we're doing a live stream. Oh, sorry.
No worries.
Yeah, where were we?
I was just talking about how like the point in the story where Skylar cheats on Walt with Ted is timed very well.
Mm. Yeah, well, I think she just needed attention,
Yeah.
or just a sliver of attention,
That's
because
also
Walt
something
gave
that
her
is
nothing.
that's also something that they tease later with Marie, but she doesn't go down that path, unlike her sister.
I found Skylar's relationship with Marie to be, quite representative of what a sisterly relationship could be like, and I think she, she was younger than Marie, but she came across as the older,
Way more experienced, yeah.
more,
Well,
yeah.
the reason why that is set up very early in the story, and that's because in the first season, Marie can't talk about anything other than what's happening in her own life. She's so self-obsessed. She doesn't
Mm,
mean any ill will by it, but she has no self-awareness of the fact that sometimes people don't give a shit about what she's saying, and maybe she should listen to her sister who's going through a lot.
mm.
Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah,
and
and then we haven't even mentioned that her husband has cancer.
that's right.
Like, that's a massive weight on her shoulders.
Mm-hmm. And
You know,
also
you should be worried.
and also the financial pressure too.
Yeah, should be worried. What happens when he dies? We have no money. I have to have this baby on
And
my
that whole
own, and I
time,
have to have a disabled child.
Walter is making a lot of money, but he can't tell her, and she's like, "Where? What's happening? I don't know.
Mm.
I'm so confused."
Well, she believed that that he accepted the donation for the cancer treatment
Yeah,
from Gretchen and Edward. I can't remember.
yeah.
So yeah, up until, but then when she found out, I think she found out that they didn't give the money when she found out about the second cell phone.
Yeah. Into season 2 was when everything crumbled for their
Mm.
marriage.
Mm.
It was right after he went into remission as well.
Yeah.
I think one of the craziest things that Skylar does, I think when she really starts to take a big step into the show in terms of her influences in seasons 3 and 4, is when she decides to become a criminal herself. She starts to launder
Mm.
money for Walter. And one of the things she does is that when Hank has his accident, she chooses to pay for it with Walter's money.
Yeah, and then make up. She wanted to make up the whole story
The
about the
gambling,
gambling
the
and
gambling.
the amount of repetition and practice she needed her
Lied.
and Walt to go
The fact
through to make
they
sure the
lied
story
to
was good.
they lied to their own son that his
Mm.
dad was a gambler.
That's unreal lengths.
Yep. And the fact that because she's doing it in public and she's saying this is what the story is, and Walter's just sitting there like, we didn't talk this through. And he just has to nod and go along with it, because if he says no, then what's his other alternative going to be? No, I'm not a gambler, I'm a meth dealer.
Mm.
I think one of the most cringy scenes, like one of those painful scenes in the show, which is it's a great scene in itself for what it's trying to do, but it's so cringe, is when she does that happy birthday to Ted.
Oh yeah,
It's pure pain.
yeah.
It's so awkward.
I can't believe she actually went through with it.
Yeah,
You get to read into her personality a bit more there,
yeah,
which you don't really see in any other
yeah,
part of the show.
yeah. I think another scene that made me absolutely crack up was when she had to cover for Ted's laundering when he got the investigation, and she pretended to be his side bitch or something.
Yeah. When the guy was there doing an inspection,
And she's like, "Oh, I just did this. I just did this, and that right, Daddy?" Like that sort of thing.
he's very intelligent
Yeah,
to be able to think of a cover up like that.
I think one of the most sad things to watch is when they do the flashback scenes to the past. So, like, firstly, when they first move into that house, and it's when they're younger,
Mm.
you know, and
Well, they're looking at buying it.
they're looking at buying it, and Walter and Skylar in the house look so happy together. And then also there's the one very, very late into season 5 when it flashes back to season 1 when he's out cooking meth in the, you know, out in New Mexico, but he still has his hair and he's on the phone to her. And it's crazy to see the contrast in the personality. You know, they seem so happy. And then it flashes forward.
They were so happy when they had no money. They had lots of money and now they're not happy.
Exactly. Because money can give you opportunities that can make you happy, but it all really depends, because if you force money into your life, it can actually make it worse.
And I think another reason, well, why I sort of feel for her is the fact that she's constantly worried about her safety, thinking that,
Yes.
you know, someone's going to just come and kill her.
Yes.
Like, having to actually just live, having to sleep through that every night would be so hard.
Not only that, but also the fact that she can see her husband is becoming an issue as well. There's that whole phase where one thing that they do subtly throughout the show is they show you the stages of their sex life. So obviously at the start of season 1, it's his birthday. And she's like, oh, what's the birthday boy gonna want? And then Walt's not he's like go to sleep. And she's like, oh, is something wrong? And then obviously he perks up again after that. He's like, oh, where did that come from?
There was the peak was when they fucked in the car. And he loved it he loved it so much because it was illegal. Yeah.
And then when she gets pregnant and he starts to get senile from his cancer, he tries to have sex with her in the kitchen and she rejects him, and it hurt, like, and he hates it.
He was trying really hard there. It didn't come off.
Yeah, and that like, you know, this is something that happens in a lot of marriages when intimacy goes away. It can make each person feel like they're not having their needs met, and they don't feel trusting and close, or, you know, like that does happen in a lot of relationships, and especially marriages at this age. You know, midlife crisis is what they call it. But, you know, she had a reason not to. She's fucking pregnant. Like, she's going through a lot. And
and the fact that she can't tell anyone about it.
And also the fact that, you know, Walt doesn't have the decency to accept it, but at the same time, he's going through cancer. He feels lonely, feels like he hasn't had his wife, you know, appreciate him. The fact that he's gone bald and he's no longer, like, you know, the man she married, and he's like sort of fading away. He feels like he's losing himself. Like, there's all that. It's becoming... He's aging rapidly. I do love the way Bryan Cranston, as cancer gets worse, he starts to act like an old man, even though he's only 50. And, you know, oh my god, I forgot about this. We're talking about subtle details. The fact that throughout the show, this is something that creeps up on you, and you always forget about it, but then it comes back, is every time he coughs. Because there'd be periods of time where he coughs a lot, if he's going a lot of cancer, he's like, like he's coughing up blood and whatever. Then he goes into remission, and then every time there's a little stressful event for him after season 2, he would give like one cough in an episode, and you're like, oh, I haven't heard that in a while. That was something I paid very close attention to, was this coughing, because it was very deliberate. Yeah. And there was that great scene in the second to last episode of season 5 when he's about to give one more big speech to Saul, as he always does, to try and intimidate him, and then he coughs on the floor.
When they're down on that holding cell. Yeah.
And then Saul's just like, nope, I've had enough. This is it. You have ruined my business. Anyway, going back to Skylar, there's that thing where she finally feels like her and Walter on the same page again. Now that she's a criminal and he's a criminal, and she's like, oh my god, my husband, and then they have sex again after all that time. But then once she realizes the truth, the more of the truth of it, she starts to become scared of him. And Walt thinks because of that one encounter that he can have what he wants, and that's when he starts to like be really creepy with her, and it gets really like on the verge of like assault sometimes, where she's lying in bed at night like scared of him, like balled up, and he's like grabbing her body and kissing her and be like, this is good night, and, like good night, like grabs her, and I was like, oh, it's so disgusting.
Yeah, that was quite unsettling watching that.
Yep. Yep. And then obviously one of her most famous scenes is at the start of season 5, I think it is. I think it's the start of season 5, when she says, "How long until you die? I'm just gonna wait until you die."
Yeah, I think Walt took that very seriously as well. Like, he didn't forget about that comment.
Well, I mean, who wouldn't?
Obviously.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
And there's that whole thing when they go to the hotel because she's scared about her safety, and then she's like, "Is Saul Goodman outside?" And he's like, "No, no, no." And every time Walter White lies in the show, and the way he brushes off, and he just goes, "Oh no, no, you understand. Oh, it's not just there." And then she's like, "Oh, I saw his car," and he just lied right to her face. Another cringe scene I forgot to mention was when Walt did that speech after the plane crash at the school.
That was, I didn't really expect anything like that.
Yep. And there's that scene where he tries, like, he gets so senile and he tries to have sex with the principal.
Yeah. He couldn't see that everyone was concerned about his behavior, but he just thought he was trying to suss.
Yeah, he gets very, like, unfiltered and doddery around that time, like in the middle of the show when his cancer treatment gets to its apex. He gets very, like, just doesn't think before he acts. There's that whole thing in season 2 where he walks into a shop naked and he's all confused.
Yeah, his fugue state.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that was more of a cover-up.
Yeah, it was. Because then he gets to the hospital and then he tries to explain it, but he's just like, "I don't know what was happening. I couldn't explain." And the doctors are just like, "Well, we have no reason to believe this is true."
Yeah, I don't think I have too much more to say about Skylar, really. I think, yeah. She's overhated, in my opinion.
Oh, definitely. I think a lot of people don't understand that she was a victim in this whole scenario. And she was basically trying to survive having Walter White as a husband. Remember, she locked him out of her house, and then he forced his way back in with the law.
Yeah.
And then remember how there was the whole thing about them getting a divorce, and then she says actually both parties have to consent to it.
Yeah. And she called the cops over, and they just couldn't do anything about it. And the only way that they could do something about it is if she actually told or incriminated him or had any evidence on it.
Yep.
But couldn't say anything.
That's correct. All right, let's move on to what is, I think, one of your favorite characters and pretty much one of mine, and that is Hank Schrader. The man from the DEA.
First thing that comes to mind is just his shirts. Bloody
fucking bowling shirts.
Bowling, 10-pin bowling, flowers, odd colours.
Yep.
Without fail.
Yep. Bald head.
Bald people.
Yep.
Funny little noises, funny little remarks.
Yeah, that actor is so funny. Dean Norris.
Just bloke behaviour.
Yep. He's very... in the first season, you don't know that much about him other than the fact that he's the brother-in-law of Walter and Skylar. You know, he's the husband of Marie, but he's presented as big. Like he has a few scenes with Walt Jr. and he's quite cringe. Like he's a lot of like jokes that fall flat.
Mm.
But slowly over the course of the show, you start to see more of him. You start to see his anxiety. You know, he puts up this jokey act around his friends. He's like, "Hey, yeah, got him." But then you see him in those like the scenes when he's in the elevator by himself, and he's like his heart's pumping, and he's almost like knocked out. Or the scene when he's in his garage and he breaks the beer bottle.
Yeah, that was quite random.
Yeah.
Yeah, after he has to go to I think it's Mexico to do that
Yep.
mission, and then he almost gets blown up from that turtle.
Oh yeah, the fucking turtle.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I think his finest moment was when he was told that he's got 1 minute to live, and he manages to kill one of the twins.
oh my
and
god.
severely injure the other one. That was impressive.
Holy shit. Yep, that was he certainly knows. I mean, he doesn't look like he doesn't look like a fit guy because he's got a beer belly, he's a big dad looking bod or whatever. But he knows how to defend himself.
He's got the instincts.
Yeah, and he punched out Jesse Pinkman as well.
He's got the instincts, but he can't always control them because I'm sure he knew that was the wrong thing to do, but he just bypassed it.
Yeah, but he's kind of. It's funny because when you look at him without knowing who he is, you wouldn't think he's the action man of the show, but he really is the action man of the show.
Yeah, I think my first memorable moment of him was when it's Walt's birthday and he says to him, "Oh, you need to get some excitement in your life."
Yeah, and he unintentionally inspires him to become a meth lord.
Yeah. And another highlight.
That whole scene where they film a video of Walter White talking to his daughter on camera. You know, the fact that it's like, oh, this is Daddy. I might not be alive for you to meet me, but this is my message to you. The fact that later in season 5, the story with Hank would wrap back around to filming videos. Like Walt films the fake fucking smear campaign against Hank, saying that Hank convinced him to become a meth dealer, and then there's also filming Jesse doing the confession as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the other highlights for me was when he shot Tuco.
Yep.
That was great. That whole standoff, the whole build up, the fact that he's there to kill Tuco and Jesse and Walt are like 100 meters away at the same time. You know, the thoughts going through my head, is he going to discover them? What could possibly happen? I think that was a really good part of the show.
Yeah, I think it's a genius idea, the fact that the person who is hunting down Walter White for the whole show is his brother-in-law. It's brilliant. And the one thing that really defines Hank as a character is that he is persistent. He never gives up. If he thinks something is fishy, he will not let it go.
Yeah.
Even if he gets in trouble with the DEA, with his boss, that old man.
He risks losing his job.
Risks his job, risks his life. He uses government resources.
He basically refuses to sleep.
Yeah.
Well, it has minimal sleep, doesn't eat.
Yeah.
Until he gets what he wants.
He goes against the advice of everyone in his life. Because he knows he's like, I can figure this out. And I think maybe my favorite, there's so many to choose from, so many great scenes, but one of the scenes that had me on the edge of my seat was when he's sitting down with Walter in that room and he reads the WW.
Yeah.
And Walt's like, you got me.
You got me. And then equally as good was when he said Walt Whitman, and he covered it up kind of, or he shifted the thought to someone else.
Yeah, and that all led up to the moment when he takes a shit. and he reads the name on the book.
And then when he drove home after that, that caused him to crash into someone's yard, and he got out of the car like,
Yep.
because he's just so overwhelmed by the unraveling of everything.
He couldn't believe that all of that time he spent in hospital with his legs fucked up was because of his brother-in-law.
Yeah, and the sheer frustration when he was trying to learn to walk again, and you could
like
see
all those times he felt like he was supporting Walter. You know, he's just like, oh, you can always talk to me. And he would come into his workplace, and Walter would be like, oh, my life's falling apart. And Hank's just like, okay, yeah, I'll just get you a coffee. I'll just get you a coffee. But the whole time it was just Walter spying on
a show.
Yep. Yep. Oh my god. And of course, that scene in the garage when Walter, again talking about choices, Walter could have walked away, but he had to stick his nose in it, and he had to go, do you know what this is? This is a device used to track cars. Were you tracking me? Do you know anything about this? Yeah. And then he slowly closes the garage, and then he fucking punches his face. Son of a bitch.
Yeah. The whole part where when he's learning to walk again, and Walt has to drive him around to the chicken farm and various places, that was just, watching that was so suspenseful.
Hank gets Walt to put a bug on Gus's car.
What if he discovers something while Walt's in the car with him?
Yeah, that scene was really funny when he went into the thing and he's just like, I didn't do it, and Gus is like, do it. Yeah. Yeah, and then also when they go to the car wash where the meth lab is, and then Walt like forces the car to crash or swerve or whatever, so that they don't.
He intentionally crashes.
Yeah.
So that he can't discover the laundry.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's actually
it's
ridiculous. The amount of risk involved.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of my favorite standoffs was between Hank and Saul in the courtroom. Not the courtroom, but like, you know, in the interview room, like, because you've got like the two people with the most evidence of this case going against each other. Like they're like equals, like head and head. Hank knows the truth, but he can't prove the truth, and Saul knows that Hank knows the truth and can't prove it. Therefore, Saul bullshits his way out of it.
Yeah, and the way that Saul always just speaks to them with no respect at all.
Oh my god!
Can't do anything about it.
Another thing about this show that it was so funny was all of the detectives were so smug.
Yeah, those two that had Jesse in season 4.
Yep, they were so patronizing.
Yeah, where's one eyebrow raised?
Yep. It's just like, no. Would that be a bit suspicious? I don't know. Would it? Oh my god, yeah, and of course, you know, Hank is just a constant throughout the show. Like you can tell the thing that makes Hank a complex character is that everything he does is because he cares about what's right, but because he's like an obsessed policeman that cares about retribution and justice, and he's like an old school police kind of guy. He is like, people need to get what they deserve, you know?
Mm-hmm.
He's the kind of guy that, like, relevant to what we know today, he's the kind of guy that would be out in his car all night looking for ram raiders. He's one of those kind of guys. He's like, I will not stop until they are caught and get what they deserve. He's one of those very persistent policemen. He cannot let it go.
Yeah, well, the fact that he basically refused a promotion just because he wanted to close this one case off.
Yep. You're not stopping him. He will slay this dragon. You will not stop him.
Mm.
And that whole conversation they have at that restaurant when Hank knows about Walt, that is Oof.
And the waiter comes along. He's like, "Oh, anyone need some water?"
Yeah, just
That
the
was
pure.
great.
I
Release.
I loved I loved the fact that when Walter tried to save Hank's life at the end, and Hank just stared him dead in the eyes and said, "This is all your fault."
Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna mention something. Maybe it'll come back to me.
I mean, the amount of times that Hank gets so close to catching Walter over the show
Oh
and
yeah.
narrowly avoids it. And it's so well written, like it's not conveniently something happens out of the blue that you couldn't predict. Like it's things that make sense that happen that are, like his wife being in danger or whatever. Like there are reasons why he misses it. Like, it never makes Hank look stupid. There's always a justified reason why he can't catch Walter.
Mm.
And I just think it's hilarious how there's so many scenarios that he could have happened, and the one that actually does happen is he takes a shit and reads the book.
Yeah.
Which makes it, I think that in itself is what makes him even more angry about it, because he's like, this is how I found out this shit. I found it out when I wasn't looking.
Yeah, he could have just spent no time on it. Just wait for the next family gathering.
Yep.
Yeah, so the scene where what's his name? It's not Beaver. It's another animal. Skinny Pete's friend.
Name. Skinny. Skinny Pete. Skinny
Badger. That's what it is.
Badger, that's the one, yeah.
So when
Oh,
they were doing that sting operation, Ed's sitting on that park bench, and then Walt comes and drives in front of
oh my god,
Hank's view.
that's one of the funniest
That was
scenes.
so fun. Yeah. I loved that so much, and then he prolonged the conversation so much longer than it should have gone.
Yeah,
he's like, "I'll just speak to you. I'll call you tonight. Like, oh, how's it all going?" It was brilliant. And then Hank was too nice to tell him to like fuck off. He was just like, "Oh, okay. Like not now, not now, not now." But it was such like a funny interaction.
yeah. Oh my god. But yeah, it's crazy how Hank starts out being super cringe, but then he becomes like one of the best characters.
Yeah, and then finally when he dies, definitely hurts.
It hurts Walter.
Definitely at a point where you.
It hurts Walter not only because one of his family members were killed, but specifically they were killed because of his actions. It's his fault that it happened.
And he falls to the ground, and it's like everything's just been sucked out of him.
Yep. And that whole phone call where Walt says, "You're never going to see Hank again." Oh.
It's lucky that he actually had the remembrance of where he was buried.
Yeah. I think it's not what I would do, but because I'm a different person to Hank, but I completely understand from his point of view the kind of character he is, why he would rather be killed than give Walter what he wants, because he is so fed up, stubborn and fed up that Walter got what he wanted by ruining lives, to cook meth, when he could have taken the money. He could have taken the charity money to look after his cancer, but he had to just go and do it himself and stick his nose in everything.
Yeah.
Betray everyone he cares about.
Yeah, after finding out, he must have just lay down and pieced it all together in his head and just been like, what?
Yeah.
How is this all possible?
So weirdly, in a way, it doesn't see it's so not set up like this at the start of the show, but weirdly, Hank is almost like the hero of Breaking Bad. He's kind of like the one that's actually chasing down who's the real villain, and it's Walter.
Mm,
So interesting.
yeah.
Of course, you've got his wife, Marie. She's a crazy
Talk about
nut.
Marie.
She's a crazy nut.
Yeah, I just didn't like how Marie could just not keep anything to herself.
Oh yeah, she's
That's-
a loudmouth.
yeah. And there was that weird little side angle where she was stealing things, and then
Oh, she
she
went
went
mad.
to those
She
she
went
went to those
crazy.
open homes as well.
Yeah.
That was so it was just bizarre. I actually don't know why they included that, but
So okay, so what they were doing. This is all what I said about cause and effect, right? Of
mm,
like what Walter's impact has done to everyone's lives. So in this scenario, because Hank got the injury, because she had to spend so much time caring about him and like being strong for him in hospital and then getting him out of hospital, and the fact that Hank was being so hard on her. You know, she was saying, I think it's time, and he's just like, I'll get out of this thing when I can walk. Shut up.
mm,
Like he was being really mean to his wife over there, and that she just wanted her husband back. You know, she wanted to feel loved, and that's why she feels so tempted by all the men around her, but she doesn't go through with it.
mm,
And there's
mm,
she feels so like unloved and so, you know, desperate that she kind of just goes crazy, and
to her desires.
yeah, she just sort of breaks.
Mm. Yeah, and then I remember when she found out what Walt had done, she just wished death on him
Yep.
instantly.
Yep.
Like there was no second thoughts.
Again, like I said about a house, it's revealed that Skylar's very much has a criminal within her, just like Walt. It's the same
Mm,
thing with Marie and Hank, is that they both think on those lines of like retribution, like getting what you deserve,
mm,
and that kind
mm.
of thing. It makes sense why she married Hank.
Yeah, facts.
Yeah, but you can tell deep down Marie really cares, but the problem is that she's such a mess, and like I think some of the most powerful drama with her is all the conversation she has with Skylar when when she found out she was involved with Walter's meth shit and the money laundering. One scene we haven't mentioned that we probably should is the scene when Hank takes Skylar to the restaurant to interview her about Walter,
Oh yeah,
and
true.
she says, "Am I under arrest?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah, I feel like through that whole conversation, she was subconsciously thinking about what's my best option here.
Yeah, she also thought, "How much does he know about me?"
Mm.
And also thinking, "Well, eventually he's going to find out."
Yeah, it was a funny one, and Hank sort of definitely didn't see it coming. He
Yeah.
just expected her to just do what he was saying.
Because he doesn't understand that she values loyalty over morals. Whereas Hank is all about morals. It's all about what's right, you know?
Mm, mm,
It's all about the law. He's a very lawful person.
yeah.
And Hank would just be like, why would you want to align with this guy who's done so many wrong things? But he doesn't understand the thing of Walter's doing it for her and her children. He doesn't see that rationale, which is why he gets so confused.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember in the conversation specifically, he had a lot of those moments where he would start a Hank that I enjoyed watching.
Yeah. I can definitely see why some people, especially Anthony, find Marie to be annoying, because I think she is an annoying person, but she plays a very good role in the story.
Yeah.
Because for this Walter White secret to be such a successful story, you need to have characters surrounding him that are a massive nuisance to his plans, and Marie is one of them. Like, if any information gets leaked to Marie, he's fucked. Because
That's a decent point.
she is such a loudmouth.
Yeah. Yeah, I think she played an important role when just looking after Hank, even though it seemed like Hank just wanted her to piss off, I think. Deep down, he appreciated her being there.
Yeah, he had that rock collection, remember?
Yeah, and yeah, she said, "Oh, your rocks arrived." He's like, "The minerals." That was pretty funny.
It's just like that reminds me of like, oh, your dolls have arrived. They're action figures.
Yeah. You watch the boxing?
Oh my god. Speaking of stuttering, shall we talk about Walt Jr.?
Okay, open the door.
Yeah. Why don't you just go die? You bitch! I think it's actually really fucked up, the fact that because of Walter White's gaslighting, it makes his son think his mum's a bitch when she's not doing anything wrong.
And it was like that all the time. He would always pin it on Skylar, and
yeah,
we'll be sitting there thinking, you've got it all wrong, man.
One of the key storylines for Walter Jr. is all about driving a car. That's like his main arc, is that Walter's teaching him how to drive a car, which is what a dad does for his son. But it gets carried away, and there's the whole thing of him buying him a fancy car for his birthday, you know? He wants his son to have a nice thing. And Skylar rationalizes why he shouldn't by saying things like, oh, it'll fuck up the laundering plan, it'll make it too obvious, whatever. But there's a deeper meaning to it as well, is that Skylar actually is the one that puts in the genuine effort to care about their son and do the things that really matter, whereas Walter White's buying his love with gifts. You know, he's love bombing him. He's like, and then Walter Jr. is too young to understand that. He's just like, yeah, you're just a bitch and you complain, and my dad buys me a big car. Fuck off. Like, it's like that kind of thing. He thinks his dad's like this amazing like hero who could give him what he wants, whereas his mum's actually the one that does the hard work.
Yeah, and I think it takes him all 5 seasons to realize that.
Yeah, it's not until the moment when that Walter has the knife in his hand that he clicks in his head, oh shit, Dad was wrong the whole time.
Yeah, and he calls the cops on his dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a very interesting character, the fact that Walter's son has, you know, that cerebral palsy condition, he has crutches, you know, he has that condition. As we said before, one of the most fucked up things is the charity, the fact that he thinks he's helping his dad's cancer when it's actually not. It's got nothing. The fact that it's all just like illegally laundered through charity.
Yeah, there was the other spiel where he would prefer to be called Flynn.
That's right.
Well, which was a weird little thing, but it made sense, obviously.
Yeah, because he didn't want to associate his name with Walter. And you notice that throughout the show, even when he goes back to not caring as much, characters that don't like Walter will still call him Flynn because they don't want him to be called Walter. Like, I'm pretty sure Marie calls Walter. He calls him Flynn late into the show.
Yeah.
It's almost before its time, actually. It's almost like akin to like a trans allegory with like changing your name, except it's not for gender reasons. It's just for like personal connection with your father reasons.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about.
You know, I want to identify something that is different to my dad, who is corrupt. But I guess also one of the reasons why they probably had him be called Walter White Jr. is because throughout the show, the common thing is that his dad is trying to control his son's life. Like, dictate everything, like tell him when he can drink, how much he drinks, what car he can drive. It's all about, this is me, you know, he has my name, therefore he is my product. And him adopting the name Flynn is him breaking away from his dad in a way.
Yeah, and he would take the bus or get a lift with his friend to school instead of getting driven by Walt.
Yeah. And like the amount of times Skylar tells Walt to stay away from his son, but he's just like, nope, he's my son, my rules.
Yeah, and there's the whole piece where you can sort of see Hank being more of a father figure to Walt Jr.
100%.
And then Walt sort of picks up on that, and that's what leads to the drinking.
I think one of the saddest things about Walter Jr. is that he never understands what the hell's going on. He's so confused. He's like, I don't understand why we have to do this. Can't someone explain? And no one can explain.
Yeah, he would have been just rightfully so, just pissed off constantly.
Yeah. You gotta remember, like, he's 16. He's a kid.
Yeah, I feel like when I watch, I think that he's older than he actually is.
Probably because the actor's older, yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, the show is shot over the course of 5 years, where it takes place over 2 years in story.
But yeah, 16, you know, you're still very young and impressionable. And you definitely want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
So it'll be very hard for him.
Yeah, and he really looks up to his father like a hero, but his father is nothing but. He's nothing like that. Yeah.
Thinking, does Walter? Oh yeah, Walt Jr. meets Gus Fring at one point in the show.
Oh my god, he does. It's crazy, and he has no idea what the implications are.
Yeah, he's like, oh, that's the friendly chicken guy from the police station.
Yeah, I know. Because there's that whole thing where Gus like organizes a free like chicken thing for the hospital, you know, and all the police and everything. And while that happens, Mike kills the guy who knows all the information.
Yeah.
I think in terms of acting, I think it's impressive because the actor, you know, Roy Frank Mitt, he also in real life has cerebral palsy.
Yeah.
So he had to act. That was real, you know, that was a real condition. So what's great about that is he really understands it. You know, he's lived it. That's why it feels so real, because he knows what it's like. You know, I think if you got an actor who wasn't like that to try and pretend, like especially a young actor, to try and pretend they have something they're not, it might not seem as real.
Definitely not.
But it was very convincing.
It would be a hard thing to act, that's for sure.
Definitely. Yeah, so I don't know if I have much more to say about Walter White Jr.
No, I feel sorry for him.
Yeah. I mean, he's got lots of money now, but he hates how it was given to him.
Yeah, he's never going to really be able to be the same after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about who is... I think this guy is a contender for best character. He's certainly up there. That is Gustavo Fring.
Yeah.
He's only in 3 seasons. He's a guest in season 2, and then he's the main villain of seasons 3 and 4. But I think he is a perfect villain.
Yeah, I love Gus. I think
probably the best actor in the show. I'd say
his acting skills are something I've never seen before. Just the way he comes across is so composed and calm, but then you also see him stressed out and panicking as well.
Yeah, so in season 2, even in his like first appearance, like the way that Walt knows he's got something to do with meth, and he just presses him in that restaurant. He's just like, "I'm sorry, what are you? I'm here to serve you." Like he's speaking like someone who's serving, but slowly you can see him, the fake persona of him being this manager of a chicken restaurant breaks down. One of my favorite things about Gus in the show is the cameras. That's one of my favorite recurring things is the cameras.
He watches everything.
Yeah. What were you gonna say?
Oh, when that first interaction between him and Walt, where he's talking in his, service voice,
Mm,
and then he switches it up and he says, "I don't think we're alike at all," in his criminal voice. I
yeah,
thought that was really, that was great. I thought that was great.
yeah. It's so interesting how it starts out like this really quote unquote innocent conversation in a in a chicken shop.
Mm.
And it turns out 2 seasons later, the end of season 4, they're playing a literal chess match to kill each other.
Yeah, and the fact that at the start he was deeply concerned about involving Jesse and everything, and then there's that point where he travels to Mexico with Jesse and Mike,
Mm-hmm.
and he's putting he's going all in with Jesse
Mm-hmm.
to be able to cook that meth, and the transition from the start to that is just you
Yeah.
never would have thought that would have happened.
The reason why I think that happens is because in season 3, he says, I think Gale will be a better person for Walter. Walter very clearly disagrees. And
Mm.
it takes Gus time to figure out why. He has Jesse on these missions with Mike, and he's doing the manipulative stuff. But in the process of seeing Walter not get along with Gale in the way that he'd expect, he slowly starts to figure out, why does Walter value Jesse so much? Why is this one specific person so valuable to him? And then when it clicks is when he says, "Oh,"
Mm.
and Gus actually learns something.
Yeah.
But I love the slow introduction of all of his acting side. So, like, obviously at the start you have the fake, I am a serviceman at a fried chicken shop, and then
Mm.
that gets torn down. You see his subtle criminal side, but he doesn't reveal it to anyone around him. And obviously, I mentioned the comedy scene before when Walter's like, I didn't do it." He says, "Do it." Like, it's really funny. Um, but it's when you see the other sides of his character, the psychopathic side, that it's shocking. Like, all the scenes with gay, like whenever he invites someone to his house, and he's so nice to them.
Yeah.
How would you like your meal?
And he hands Walt a knife
Yep.
as well.
I think one of the most creepy things about Gus is how thorough and perfectionist he is with everything.
Mm.
All the scenes where he slowly moves his clothes and he adjusts his tie.
Everything's got to be even when he vomited up the poison.
Yep.
And then in the toilet, and he makes sure he puts his outfit on.
Yep. Everything is by procedure. It's all so exact. Everything has to be very, very exactly the way he needs it to be. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And the fact that he has so many people working for him that he can just track whoever he wants. And he knows what's happening at all times. He has all these cameras everywhere and all these people spying and on the phone with him. And like there's one scene in the show where the fucking penny drops, and like, you haven't seen Gus in a while. Something like insane is going to happen, and then it just cuts to a shot of Gus at the laundry place, and he just gets on the phone and says, "Stop it now," and everything changes. Like, it's so shocking to see how much power he has over so many people.
So that was when he called off the twins' attack on Walt, right?
I think so, yeah. I think so, and like, it was so unexpected because we hadn't seen Gus in a while.
Mm.
And then I think one of the most shocking scenes is after Gale gets shot by Jesse at the start of season 4. He walks slowly into the lab and he slices that guy's throat.
Yeah, that was such a twist that I could not have predicted.
And then obviously there's that bit where the other cartel is making threats, and he walks outside and he puts his hands out and he does that really serious face.
Because he knows that they just wouldn't kill him.
Yeah, because they need him.
Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah,
But yeah, he's also got a dark side where he's happy to kill kids.
Yep. Oh my God, Jesus Christ.
He's happy to, do whatever it takes to maintain the business.
Yeah, well, there's that kid that's stealing drugs that dies. Obviously, Combo
Mm,
dies on that same street. There's the guys that get run over by Walter. He saves Jesse.
mm,
Um, yeah, it's crazy. His control over the twins in season 3,
yeah.
and there's that whole scene where he gets them all to gather together in that little house out in the fields, and he says,
Mm,
"Like businessmen, you'll look each other in the eye and you'll shake hands."
yeah. That was his way of solving the problem, and I guess
Yep.
it didn't really work.
One of the best recurring things throughout the show is everything to do with Ryzen. Because that starts very early. Like they discuss Ryzen, I think it's near the end of season 1 or start of season 2. It's like very, very early on, it becomes relevant, and then eventually Walter thinks, Jesse can kill Gus with Ryzen. And of course, Jesse can't do it. He can't kill Gus. He's just too. He just can't do it, and he's already killed Gale. He just can't kill Gus. He refuses, and he has to lie to Walter and say that he hasn't seen him when he has.
Yeah. I think Gus's one weakness was his relationship with Hector, and obviously it got exposed.
That's right, because it was a personal vengeance. He had to do it himself.
Yeah, that's where he went wrong. He was almost perfect.
Yep. Almost perfect, but he let his personal agenda get in the way of it. That's like, there's that scene of like, do you want me to just go inside? I'll use out here. He's like, nope, I have to do it myself. And that's when he does that slow walk, and you get that music basically like orchestrating his death about to happen. And that look on his face, when he realizes
it's Hector the one that killed him.
Yeah, that look on Gus's face when he realizes he's about to die.
He goes, "Oh!"
Like he throughout the entire show he had shown so much composure, and then in that moment we finally saw something we'd never seen, and that was, I am fucked. I can't do anything about it. I have been outsmarted. And there's that whole thing of like Walt's trying to find ways to assassinate. Like he puts that bomb under his car, and then Gus is standing in the car park, and then he walks away, and Walt's like, oh! Ah! Like, he thought he had it all worked out.
Yeah, I think about that actually. I think how was it that just this once he decides not to get into his car, but I think in that moment the stakes were high.
I think he knew that there was a chance that
he's definitely thinking about possibilities.
Yeah, I think in that moment he knew there was a chance that he, because he had left his car unattended, there was someone could have done something to it. That's kind of why Walter White and Gus are such great chess players, is because they anticipate each other's moves. Because they think along such similar lines in a lot of ways. They're like, what would I do if I was trying? Like that's what basically what Gus does. He's like, if I was trying to kill me, what would I do? It takes him a long time to think that, though. You notice how long he stands there, thinking like.
Yeah, he stood there for a decent minute or so.
Yeah, a while. He's like, actually, I'm not going to take that risk. But yeah, that whole flashback to when he was young, that gave context for why he is the way he is. It's his villain origin story. It's like, this is how I became who I am. This is the trauma that made me. And that whole trip to Mexico with Jesse and Mike, I think it was. Yeah. And there's that whole thing with the
Yeah.
hospital as well. Like he's got like those private doctors.
I would expect nothing less, to be honest. If you have that much money,
Yeah.
you'd want something set up.
But how fucking corrupt those doctors are, the fact that they don't give a shit about Mike.
Yeah, well, as the main doctor said, he's like, he pays my salary, so I'm saving him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Again, it's
Mike
like
just got left.
money is literally power.
Yeah.
But yeah, oh, there's probably so much more I'm forgetting about Gus, man. There's so many good scenes.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. I mean, it feels like he was in it for longer than he was.
Yeah, he made such an impact. He was only a guest character in season 2, and then he was a main in season 3 and 4. Because seasons 3 and 4 was when they went to his meth lab thing, you know, underground in the laundry.
I think the main thing for me is just that he was always one step ahead of everyone.
Always, and he always knew everything.
He always had
when Walter was walking to his house to kill him, and then he gets a call on the phone saying, "Stop where you are and turn around and go home." Yeah. Oh, remember there's that scene where Walter gets his neighbor to walk into his house for him?
Yeah, he was ready to sacrifice his poor old lady neighbor.
Yeah. And then I love what they did with her near the end of the show, where it's like she sees him like all that time later and she drops that thing on the floor, and then immediately in the next scene she's like, "Hey, Walter," in the past. Like 1 year earlier.
Right, I'm just gonna feed the cat.
Sure. Well, do you have anything more to add on Gus? I just think he's brilliant.
I don't think so.
All right, well, now we get to talk about who is once again another one of the best characters in the show. He's the absolute legend, I know. And this is the character that I think is going to be the most incomplete things to say, because obviously there's a whole nother show.
Saul.
But Saul Goodman, he he's recurring in season 2, and then he becomes a main for seasons 3, 4, and 5.
Saul is one of my favorite characters I've ever watched.
Yeah, and I still haven't seen the other 6 seasons of him. In Better Call Saul, I've got that to look forward to.
You sure do.
Yeah, but he's a bloody legend.
Yeah.
He's one of the funniest characters. He's one of the most useful characters. He's one of the smartest characters. He's so different to everyone else in the story.
Yeah. Just when you think everything is done, you call Saul and he's got the salute.
Like the phrase "Better Call Saul" is so accurate, because it's like, if you're in deep shit, he's the guy you call. And there's the amount of times that he gets Walter and Jesse out of deep shit is insane.
They would never have gotten anywhere without him, that's for sure.
Yeah. And that actor is so fucking funny.
Yeah, he's got those mannerisms. Yeah. And he's got catchphrases, and and you can see that behind the act, he's always worried about what could happen to him over anyone else.
Yeah, he's taking a big risk
because he's weighing it up.
There's that line that Jesse says, "You don't need a criminal lawyer, you need a criminal lawyer."
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. But he's so fun. And like his little group of people, like the receptionist lady and bloody Hugh or whatever his name is.
Hugh and that other dude.
Yeah. It's like it's such a funny little corner of the show.
Yeah.
But what makes Saul so interesting is he's dealing with really serious crimes and like kids dying and meth and shit, and he's so lighthearted about it.
Yeah.
One of my favorite little gags is that he so persistently wants them to like buy the laser strike place.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you mentioned that a couple of times at least.
Yep. Yep. And yeah, the amount that Saul actually has to get involved in Walter and Jesse's life, it becomes so excessive that he goes over the top with it. I mean, he helps Walter poison a child. That's really messed up.
Yeah.
But there's so many lines. Ah, God, I wish I had like I wish I had like a list of Saul Goodman quotes from Breaking Bad, but I don't want to spoil myself with Better Call Saul.
Yeah, he always likes to say, let's get it down to brass tacks.
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah. And I didn't even know what a brass tack was.
It's an American thing.
Yeah, it's just a saying.
Yeah. And what was it? His fake name is Jimmy McGill.
Correct.
Yeah.
I won't go too much into that.
Oh my God, his bloody what was it? His bloody drawer with all those phones. Two of those stupid little phones. Is the one with like the one with the little Hello Kitty on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's like a little compartment of money.
Yeah, I loved his office. How it had those pillars of law when what he was doing was far from it.
We the people.
Yeah, we the people.
Yeah. But yeah, like as I said before, any time he has to advocate for Jesse is just the most satisfying thing ever. He just gets it done. And the fact that like again, like him and Walter are so different. Walter's like very like, let's stick with the plan. He's just like, no, hold on.
Yeah, I think the one thing I loved was his attitude. Like, we'd see the scene where he's lying down, taking a phone call, getting that foot massage.
Yep.
Thought that was awesome.
He's got such a fun lifestyle.
And he always had that earpiece in his ear.
Oh my God, the earpiece.
Yeah.
Always ready.
And there was the one point where he came into the car wash. And I think Skylar was there.
Yep. Skylar's like his arch nemesis because she can't be fooled by him.
Yeah. And then he kept suggesting when they're trying to make a plan, he's like, you could always kill them, but he said it in like a send them to Belize or whatever it was.
They're like, Saul? Hank is family.
Yeah, that was brilliant.
He's like, well, you're running out of options.
Oh,
my God.
Oh, I need to put my phone on charge.
All right. But yeah, Saul's great. And I cannot wait to see what he's like in Better Call Saul. Like, at him as the main character, that's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. You're just gonna love it.
And I definitely think, like, in the later seasons, like especially 4 and 5, they really started to peel away at his more serious side as well. Like how scared he was of everything. And there's that scene there's that scene where Jesse like bleeds him out and punches him in the face because of what he did to Brock.
He knows it's getting serious. So.
Yeah, like that scene where Jesse's about to escape and get a new life, and then he realizes what Saul did.
Yeah. I think he once he realized he was in over his depth, all the funny business sort of, he dropped all the funny guy act.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, it's just so interesting to see someone so cheerful, yet he's like a mass criminal. And
well, I guess he thought he was untouchable at the start.
Oh, for sure. He thought he was the man. It makes me wonder, like, how much of the meth money did Walter have to pay Saul for his service?
I think he was on about 17%.
Oof, that's a lot.
Mm. Well, that was at least what they agreed to at one point.
Well, that's what they agreed to when he was doing it in his RV. But I think once Gus got involved, it started to get complicated.
Mm.
Because there's that whole thing about how Jesse was trying to siphon off some of the meth and sell it on the street.
Yeah.
Or sell it in the rehab thing, and Gus was like suspicious about it because he knows everything.
Yeah. And that's when they started counting the boxes of meth twice.
Well, that's the thing, right? When Walter was using supplies from the school, they were counting the inventory. This was back in like season 1. They were counting the inventory, and there was variance, which is something that I'm glad I've worked in a fast food restaurant. I understand what an inventory is. But that happened, and then that comes back later with Gus in a much bigger form, where Gus keeps a fucking perfect inventory, like nothing can go wrong, otherwise you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll probably have more to say about Saul if we end up reviewing Better Call Saul.
Absolutely.
Like, down the line. The next main character is Mike Ehrmantraut. He comes into the story after Jane dies. I love his introduction with Jesse, like the way Jesse's in like deep depression. He's just like, "You're gonna have to fucking get up now." He like disposes of all the evidence.
Yeah, I really like Mike. I enjoy his competency in what he does.
Yeah,
and I found that really entertaining. How he was just always, he was onto it all the time.
Yeah,
and he would stay up watching Walt all night, and
he's dedicated to his job.
He was one of my favorite characters as well.
Yeah, he had a great call. He had like his relationship with his granddaughter as well.
Yeah, that's the one side that he doesn't really show to people. That he just wants to. He's doing what he does to look after his granddaughter, basically.
Yep, and
that's all criminal reason.
I kind of knew from the start, as soon as I knew about that his end was always going to revolve around those two worlds of his crossing over. That was when it was going to like screw up for him. It was when his criminal life and his personal life was going to come together. And it was really sad to see that he chose to protect himself over his granddaughter.
Yeah. I mean, that I would have expected that, though. But yeah, it's still sad to see.
And again, talking about character choices, at the start of season 5, he wanted out. He wanted out of the business, and Walt managed to force him back in.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, he was on his way out, and then Walt just... I don't know, when he shot him, it's like he almost didn't intend to do it fatally. But then it just worked out that way.
It was heat of the moment.
Definitely heat of the moment.
It's because Mike finally faced up to Walt and stood up to his bullshit and said, if it wasn't for you and your pride, none of this, we wouldn't be in this hellhole. And Walt couldn't take that. He couldn't take it. He couldn't take the insult.
Yeah, I think with Mike, his partnership with Gus, it worked really well. Like, Gus knew he could trust Mike, and Mike knew that, Gus just was a no-nonsense kind of guy, just like Mike is. So. Yeah, and I found it quite interesting when they would always communicate on the phone, and it would always be like a 5-word conversation.
Yep.
They were always on the same page.
Yeah, what was interesting is that he was really fond of Jesse, actually. Mike was.
Mm.
He sort of understood where he was coming from, even though Jesse didn't really see why yet for a while. But the one thing you can say about Mike is he fucking despises Walter. Because Walter is the biggest pain in the ass in his life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like when he said we had a good thing going, and Walt went and fucked it all up, basically.
Yep, and he's right.
Yeah.
And I loved the little subplot of Mike having to provide that money for those ex-meth dealers in prison, and he had to keep their mouth shut. And that whole thing of, like, keeping them in those little safes and everything.
Yeah, that was a cool little scene.
Yep, and then there's that scene with that, you know, the Hank's friend from the DEA catches the lawyer.
Yeah.
That was great. But also, that whole thing of having to kill all the prisoners at exactly the same time. That was crazy.
Yeah, and the fact that Walt reverted to using, you know, dodgy ass criminals to do that.
Mm-hmm.
He trusted them to do it, and they did.
Yeah, that's insane. They all had to do it at exactly the same time. There was no suspicion. So that, like, because if you killed one, then everyone in prison would be looking out on their backs, like, "Am I next?" But if you blindside all of them at the same time, none of them will see it coming.
Yeah, just eliminate all risk of anyone talking, basically.
Yeah, and that scene after Walt shoots Mike, and then he realizes, oh shit, Lydia has the names too.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Fucking the biggest fuck up ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I know Anthony loves Mike.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
You know, shut your mouth, Walter, and let me die in peace.
Yeah, and Mike makes some of the funniest expressions in the show.
Yes.
It's like, oh.
Yeah, there's all those memes that he's just like Squidward.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he's a great character. I think he's really important to the show.
Very dry sense of humor.
Just being Gus's right-hand man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that there's that scene where Mike has Walter at the laundry with like a gun to his head. And Walter gives him a really good reason not to kill him, and he just looks at him like, "You son of a bitch, you've done it again."
Yeah, that was awesome. And
yeah, he gets so fed up. He gets so fed up with Walter. It's crazy.
That was the end of the season, right?
Season 4, I think. Is it?
I think it was the end of season 3.
3? Yeah, I think you're right. It was the same episode where Jesse shoots Gale, so it would have been end of season 3. It's weird. Seasons 3 and 4 are kind of the same in my head. They're very like, it's like Gus's story. They're very like, I can define 1 and 2 and 5, but 3 and 4 it kind of blends into one. I forget which one's in which. Yeah. And also, he has all those little places around where he hides the money as well, like little holes in the ground, and like a pirate, you know, hiding his treasure. And like there's that bit at the airport car park.
Just having to drive miles and miles and miles between them as well, and he has to listen to his shitty radio in his old car.
Yep. Remember, there's that whole scene where they did like a fake thing. I think Gus organized a fake thing so that Jesse thought he was a hero.
Yeah. And it damaged Mike's car.
Yep. Oh, yeah, he's great. And the other thing that he was involved in was his storyline with Lydia at the start of season 5, when he was going to her house making threats to her, and obviously that thing all collapsed once he was dead, because then he was no longer a threat to her.
Yeah, because he just saw her as a massive liability, and maybe he was a bit sexist as well.
Yeah, that's true. Lydia only in season 5. I think she played a really good role, actually. She's one of those people where every second of every day she's paranoid.
She's a peculiar character, but
yeah, goes in and has those meetings and doesn't want to be seen, and she's like, I must have my stevia with my drink.
Yeah, and yeah, she was important to the like carrying on of the meth for Walt. That's for sure.
Well, also the other thing is that a lot of the meth lords we'd seen in the show have been male. It was interesting to have a woman in in that industry and see what that would have been like.
And I think you get to see her house once, and it's like a big mansion, so you can tell
she's
that
so rich.
She's pretty money hungry and obsessed.
Yeah. But the thing is that despite the fact she's living in luxury, her life is fucked, and she's always paranoid. She's caught herself in a trap she can't get out of.
Yeah, and then she has to revert to working with Todd.
Oh yeah, and he's like interested in her sexually.
Yeah.
There's that whole scene where she has to close her eyes and walk past a pile of dead bodies.
That was killing off all of those other dudes that Walt had made business with.
Yep.
Yeah,
one thing that we did forget to mention, I've just remembered, was that whole trip to Mexico when Jesse saw the meth lab down there and how mediocre it was, and Jesse was basically their boss. And he basically got to be Walter White in that situation. It was very satisfying for him to just be like, these standards are shit. You're going to do it my way.
And then Gus was looking at him like, that's my boy.
Yep. Oh, it was so satisfying. Absolutely wrecked. It was brilliant.
That was pwned.
Yep. But I thought the twist in the finale that Lydia was killed by her own stevia was insane. The fact that the Ryzen, something that was set up from season 1, ended in it finally got used in the last episode of the last season. Finally
and
killed.
You predicted it as well, where you said you thought you noticed something.
It was the shot when she poured the stevia into her drink. The way it was filmed, I was like, that has to be the Ryzen. There's no way that was an accident that they filmed it like that. That's actually a good thing to point out about like top-down camera shots. That was one of them. One of the other ones they do a lot of is whenever Walter gets a cancer scan, it's like upside down him on the table. He like rolls towards him.
Yeah.
And like any time he's getting stuff dripped into him, like it goes through all the tubes first, and then you see him like all the dripping. It's disgusting. Yep. Any scene in the show that had like needles as well, like with the heroin needles was awful.
Oh, I couldn't watch that. I couldn't watch that.
I mean, I think the scene where Jesse takes the heroin is really interesting, like when he just levitates.
He bloody floats towards the ceiling.
Yeah.
It's like a big release for him, I guess.
Yeah. I think some of the scenes where Lydia was chained up by Mike under that, like underground, there were some really great scenes of like everyone trying to manipulate each other.
Yeah, that was quality.
And she's like, what about this? But what about this? But what about this? What about this?
Just say anything to save her life.
Yeah. And Mike's like, you are not going anywhere.
Yeah, and it turned out she was telling the truth.
Yep. Yep. And it wasn't until Mike was dead that she felt like she'd finally gotten away from it, and then she gets poisoned. And of course, the last main character to talk about is Todd, who's also from season 5. I think my favorite thing about Todd, I mean, probably one of the most interesting things that you've pointed out to me is that how nice he was to Jesse when he was in prison. Which is an interesting detail, but I think my favorite thing about the Todd storyline is the whole thing with the train. The whole train sequence. That is one of the best episodes. Yep. And the fact that Todd shoots the child at the end is crazy.
Yeah. And that was just when they didn't really know who Todd was. And then he sort of killed the child, and then they were like, "Oh well, you're stuck with us now," sort of thing. You bloody yeah.
And
That's
again, much like Lydia with the whole Mike thing, Mike was also threatening Todd too, saying like, if you mess this up, like you're dead meat, bro. He was like putting him up against the wall. But when Mike died, Todd became more in control.
mm. Yeah, Todd's a funny little character. It's like he was an impressionable guy that seemed like he would follow the leader, but then he also had these uncles that were powerful, and he knew that he could sort of rely on them if something happened.
Well, yeah, his uncles are part of a Nazi gang, which is pretty fucked up.
Yeah. But Todd seemed like a loyal guy. Like when Jesse left and Walt tried to teach him how to cook meth, he was, it seemed like he was really putting his all into learning.
He pulled his weight for sure, and
Yeah.
he was kind of like an anti-Gale, really.
Mm.
He's like the opposite of Gale.
That's a good way of putting it.
Mm. Yeah, Todd was fascinating, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe someone could say he might not have had enough screen time, but I'm not sure about that. Because I think they told a good story with him. I mean, season 5 is 16 episodes long.
Yeah, I think he got enough screen time.
It's double the length of season 1. Like, it's a long time.
Mm.
Had season 5 been shorter, maybe I would argue that it wasn't enough, but they split it over 2 years. They did, I think it was 8 episodes in 2012 and then 8 episodes in 2013.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a few other like side characters, like the Hank's friend from the DEA. He was fun, and obviously and of course his boss.
Yeah, I don't know his name.
Yeah, he was a good part. And
There's the twins.
Yeah, the twins. Oh my god!
Anytime they were on the screen, it was awesome.
I mentioned this a lot when we were watching the show, but like, the show has a lot of silent Mexicans and a lot of bald old men.
Yeah. Which are 2 great additions to have, really.
Yep. One scene we haven't mentioned that I really liked is the scene when Skylar goes to I think it's the border of like 4 states.
Oh, yes, with the baby.
Yeah, and she's flipping the coin to see where she would go, and then she eventually decides to stay. That's another example of someone who could have made a different choice but chose to stay.
Yeah, I forget about that scene, but nah.
I also think it's really interesting that the way the show is structured, the end of season 4 is presented like a happily ever after. It's presented like the end of like, oh my god, we defeated Gus. It's all over. Jesse's happy, Walt's happy, everything's great. And then season 5 happens, and the absolute opposite of that turns out.
Yeah, I remember the scene with the twins where they drive up the dirt road and they get out of the car, and then they start crawling up the hill, and then they get into the house, and there's a picture of Heisenberg there.
Yep.
That was such an interesting scene. It's just you're like, what? You just think, what the hell's going on? And then it's just, yeah, I thought it was awesome.
And that scene where Walter goes to the hospital and they're like, oh, you need to look at the guy, look at him. And Walter's like, I don't know about that, I don't know this, but and then they force him to look, and then the guy with no legs looks Walter in the eyes, and he looks so angry.
Yeah, and he like climbs off the bed.
Yeah, and Walter's just like, I don't know, like he's like, shit, hopefully they don't figure out what that is. Yeah. God, so good.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. I'm
drained.
Yeah, that was... There's so many...
There's so much to talk about. There's so many
characters. Like, there's things we haven't even mentioned, like the Mexican ladies from the laundry. That was fucking hilarious. There's the guy who owns the car wash. You know the guy who owns the car
yeah,
wash with the mustache? The eyebrows guy? Yeah, that was fucking great. Bloody hell. There's the school teachers.
Yeah, and Huel,
Oh my god, Huel. Huel is so funny.
obviously. Huel
That
is
scene
just a giant man.
every time Huel breathes loudly in a quiet room.
Yeah. He's tired from sitting down.
And then he has that scene where he lies on the money.
Yeah. He's like, I would dream about doing this.
Oh my god! And then obviously, there's the great bit in season 1 where, they try and take Walter's meth and he blows them up. And the RV, that's great.
He blows up Tuco's hideout.
I should probably also, I'll be remiss not to mention the fact that at the very start of this show, Walter White nearly kills himself with a pistol. And there's no bullets in the chamber. And had there been bullets in the... Yeah, the fact that there was no bullets in that gun and he didn't kill himself, this whole show happened. All these events happened because he survived that.
That's wild.
The attention to detail in this show is just like, it's crazy.
Yep.
Even scenes like when they're in the fried chicken takeaway and they're talking to Gus's staff members that don't have no idea that they're working for a meth lord.
Yeah, they're so innocent.
Yep.
And he's like showing one of them how to use the fryer or how to cook the fries.
Yep. Oh man. Woof. Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah, if there's any characters or any storylines that we've forgotten, we'll probably come back to it if we ever review like El Camino or Better Call Saul. We can just talk about it after. The one more thing we do have to do to sort of end off the video is, and this is going to be really hard and probably the hardest I've ever done this before because it's such a great, consistent show, it is to rank the seasons from least favorite to favorite. And I'm still not 100%. But I think it's possible. I think all 5 seasons are great in their own right. So even the one at the bottom is like better than most seasons of any other show. I think season 1 has to be at the bottom. Because it's 8 episodes. And it does take a bit of time to warm up. It does a lot of hard work in establishing all the characters and the story, but when you really look at like all of the characters that are in every season after it, the show gets so much bigger after season 1. And yeah, I just think there's nothing really wrong with it. I just think that the other seasons achieve more.
I see.
You get what I mean? So what would you put at the bottom?
I would also put season 1.
Yeah.
Mainly because, it is a slow burn, slower than some shows, but it's still great. I still enjoyed it. But if I'm having to choose one to put at the bottom, it would just be where there's the initial character development. There's nothing. It's still unfolding. There's no big things that are happening.
It's kind of like setting the table, really.
Yeah. Things are being set up, but it's still watching it being set up is great. But I think when there's big twists and stuff happening in the later seasons, I would enjoy watching that more.
Yeah, but I think if I were to give season 1 a big sort of praise for its overarching story, is the whole thing of Walter losing his hair is a huge visual thing, because the episode where he goes bald is the episode where he becomes Heisenberg.
Yeah, season 1 for me would be bottom.
Now, after this is very, very difficult because for me, the next two above it are like literally they are on par with each other. And I've mentioned how they are connected to each other because they are basically one big story. And there is one detail that separates them for me. So for me, number 4 is season 4, which is really hard because season 4 has some of the best moments in the whole show. The only reason why it's below the one that I put above it is just because I think that scene where Gus is like, looks like Two-Face is just too hard to believe.
Oh, wow.
It's like the only stupid moment in the whole show. And it's really funny that he adjusts his tie and he's got half a burnt face. But if I'm gonna nitpick this show, it's literally the only thing I can think of. But apart from that, it's fucking incredible season. It's when Walter's whole life just like rips to shreds, like the money with Ted and all that with him in the basement. It's when Gus really shows all of his development, all of his history. It's when they have to, they forcefully burn down the thing. It's the Hector payoff. Oh my god. Season 4 has a lot going right for it. It's also the season when Hank sits down with Walt with the WW paper. And he's like, oh, you got me. Like, there's a lot of great stuff in season 4.
Yep.
Yeah, is Fly in season 3 or 4? I can't remember.
3.
3, I think it's 3. Yeah. So yeah, nothing against season 4. It's great. I just think it has one stupid moment, and that's why it's like the margins are so tiny between the seasons. It's so tiny.
Oh yeah, smallest margins ever.
Yeah. Anyway, what's your number 4?
Well, it is different to yours.
Mm-hmm.
I would say season 2 is my number 4.
Okay.
And I think if I'm trying to differentiate, I would say when Gus is involved in a season, I just think it takes another step up. And obviously he wasn't in season 2.
He was in it as a guest, but he's not heavily involved.
He wasn't like, a main character sort of thing. And so I think that was one of the main things that separates it for me. And still, in season 2, that it's still like a small time thing. I think they're still, using the RV or.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
But that's also the one where like it gets a bit more desperate. Like that's when he has to make a battery out of coins and all that. It's like that season.
I mean, yeah, there's some sensational episodes in every season.
Yeah.
But I'm the way I'm making my rulings is what actors are involved in the seasons. And yeah, season 2.
Just kind of personal preference, right? It's like which characters slightly are better.
It's just opinion at this point. And in seasons 3, 4, and 5, there's moments that are just gigantic. There's big time scenes, and I think there's just more of that in the later seasons than season 2. So yeah.
Right. So I kind of hinted at it. My number 3 is season 3. It's basically exactly the same quality as season 4, except it doesn't have the stupid Gus moment, and it has Fly, which is one of the best episodes ever. Yeah, this is also the season with Gail Bedecker as well, and that's a great storyline.
Yeah.
It's when Skylar starts to become a criminal. And it's also the season when Hank has that whole thing with the twins, and then he gets injured, which is really crazy. Gus becomes a main character in this. There's a lot in this season. I think this is also. I'm trying to remember when Skylar and Ted's, because I think Skylar cheats on Walt by season 3, but it's teased earlier. Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah, because I'm trying to remember. Like, season 3 is the one where I'm trying to remember the most of what happens because it's right in the middle. And as I said, it blends very much into season 4.
We we probably watched that about 3 months ago now.
Yeah. But yeah, no, season 3 is incredible. It's, again, like, as I said, like, there's nothing wrong with season 3. It's just very personal, slight marginal reasons as to why I prefer the ones above it. I do think, actually, I will say, I do remember the first few episodes of season 3. It was like the only time in the show that I thought that some of the momentum was a little bit mishandled in some of it, but it was it was for a very small period of time, and it was only from like episodes like 2 to maybe 4. It was like a very small period of time where it could have been sharpened up a little bit, but the story, the actual narrative was still really good in it. And again, as I say, we're talking like two to 3 episodes out of 13 in a season. Once it got to the bit where it was the twins and Hank and that whole action scene, everything from season 3 onwards and there is just, it's like unbelievable television. Yeah. So season 3 is my number 3, but it's close, very close. What's your number 3?
Season 3 as well.
Yep.
Yeah, so just comparing it, it's like the beginning of the whole Gus era, and I can't go into as much detail as you just because my timeline, I've watched the recap, but it can only.
Well, I think season 3 is the hardest. It's the hard, not in a bad way, but it's the hardest one to remember what happens in it because it's right in the middle.
I just think, it's built. Season 3 is building into season 4, sort of thing.
Season 3 is the last one when Walter's a teacher.
Yeah, I think for me, I preferred it when Walt was not teaching. I just enjoyed watching it more when he didn't have to worry about being a teacher. And that's definitely personal preference, but yeah, I think it's more of I enjoyed 4 and 5 so much, and 3 is just like a little bit below that. That's why I'm putting it there.
Well, it does a lot of setup for 4, doesn't it? Season
4
3.
and 5, 4 and 5 just had so many amazing moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So my number 2, this was hard, really hard, because I actually think if we're talking about consistent writing, payoffs, and just overall raw quality, I think the one I've chosen at number 2 is actually a better season. But I have a personal reason why I've got them flipped. My number 2 is season 5. It's a perfect season. It does everything right. It pays off every character in the most sensational way. It's like all 4 seasons have built up all of these storylines. The only thing that it doesn't pay off is obviously Gus, because he dies at the end of season 4. But every other storyline, the outlaft of that, like the aftermath of that, and then every other character, Hank, Walter Jr., Skylar, Jesse, all the drug lords, everything gets paid off in the most perfect, like, sensational way. It's also 16 episodes, so it really gives itself time to let everything play out in a natural way. But there's no filler, it's all necessary. And honestly, that finale is just, it's insane how perfect they nailed the ending of the show as well. Yeah. I have nothing negative to say about season 5. It's actually probably objectively the best season, but there's just a personal reason why the one I put at number 1 is number 1.
And you're gonna not say that yet?
No, you can say your number 2 first.
Okay, I've also gone with season 5 as number 2. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things that you've already said, it was basically perfect, but it comes down to personal preference for me as well. Yeah. And it was mainly due to just having Gus in the show. I think those were the most exciting times because it was so unpredictable for me. And that the latter part of his storyline where you could see it was all spiraling out of control for him, and Walt was slowly like taking over control of the situation, and then when it comes to the end, I'm not too worried about the explosion, but just more of the actually how it was planned out and why he had one weakness and Walt managed to expose it.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, you're
So
talking about season 4. You should be talking about
yeah,
season
I
5.
know. Yeah, I mean season 5, we just watched it. It's all so fresh. I mean, I don't have really anything wrong with it. I think maybe one thing personally is that I just don't like endings, or too many endings, I should say. There was so many characters that either died or went off, and maybe that's why I'd put it lower.
I guess the fact that the show had to end is annoying.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
it also, in all respect, it ended it in the right way.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah,
if I were to say something positive and negative,
absolutely.
if I were to say something positive and negative, something that season 5 does really well that I haven't mentioned is the fact that you get those pre-title sequences that both flash back to the past before Breaking Bad, but they also flash forward to the last episode when he's 52. Those are great little foreshadowing bits. I guess I've heard some people say that because it's the Nazi gang and it's not Gus, it's like a lower, like a lesser threat. But the thing you got to remember is that Walter is the villain by season 5. So it's a bit more complicated than that. It's not just about Gus. But yeah, yeah, you can't really fault it. So my number 1 is season 2. It's not the best season. It probably, of the 5, it actually might have the most issues, thinking about it. However, I think, firstly, I'll get to the main point, but firstly, it's the introduction of Saul, it's the introduction of Mike, it's the introduction of Gus. The building it does to create the rest of the show is massive. The constant gaslighting and lying between Walter and Skyler is so good to watch every time. It's also when you see lots of development for Hank and his anxiety with Walter's flashbacks to his old job. It's the episode, like it has the episode where Walter confronts his, that girl that woman he used to work with, and he says, "Go fuck yourself."
Bloody yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. It was captivating. As we explained earlier in the review, it has my favorite season-long arc of what's in the swimming pool. That was fucking genius. That was so good. But for me, I think the most invested emotionally I've ever been in this show was with Jesse and Jane. And that's why season 2 for me is number 1. Because that storyline really hit me. Like, that moment when she dies, the heroin overdose, is just... And Walter, like, watches her die, lets it happen, and then he puts his hand over her mouth and, like, cries as he realizes what he's done. It's, like, it's so powerful. And then, following that, her father causes the plane accident to happen. It's just, like, it's some of the best television I've ever seen. It's like, I couldn't believe what I was watching.
Can't disagree with you.
Yeah. And as I said, the scene, and obviously, like, Walter, and, like, in the first half of the season, like, when they go on that whole Mexican journey and, like, the turtle blowing up and the Mexican songs and Saul and Walter going naked into the thing. And, oh my god, season 2 is when he's hiding the money in his own house in the little nappy box and, like, the little filter.
Yeah.
Fucking hell, it was so funny. One more thing I didn't mention about season 3 before is that was the one with the pizzas on the roof. That's hilarious.
Oh, my favorite scene ever.
Yep.
He comes to the door and is like, pizza! Thinks a pizza's gonna fix everything.
Yeah. But, I mean, sometimes it does. But, yeah, it's the relationship with Jesse and Jane, like, Jesus Christ, it's like I felt so invested in this, and I knew that it was not going to lead to a happy ending. I knew it all the way through, but I was just like, every episode I was just like begging for it not to happen, and then it happened. Yeah, Yeah, I had a very, very, very good time watching season 2. Yeah.
All right.
And your number 1 is season 4.
Correct.
Because that's Gus's big season.
Gus's big season. Yeah. I mean, I just said it before. It's just, I think he was my favorite character in the show, and I enjoyed it the most when he was involved all the time, and yeah, just seeing how he dealt with situations, and the short phone calls with Mike, and flying to Mexico, and he poisoned himself and everyone else, and
The fact those scenes where there's that scene where Walter walks into the meth lab, looks directly at the security camera and just screams at him.
yeah, yeah, the way that he would just continually tease Walt and always be a step ahead, and then the roles, he was losing grip, and yeah, it was just
that whole trip to Mexico is just
yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have too much else to say really. I'm pretty drained.
Yeah. Yeah.
My brain's been unloaded. I'm sure I said that at the end of the last time.
Yeah, I know. It's a rich show with so much. We've only talked about probably half the shit that happens in it. It's such a rich show. Yeah. Oh my god. Woo! Well, yeah. I mean, all I can say is that I'm looking forward to El Camino and Better Call Saul, and I'm sure we'll probably come back around one day and review that too.
Yeah, all I can say is if you're watching this and you haven't seen Breaking Bad, just stop what you're doing and watch it now.
We've just spoiled the whole show for you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I didn't think about it like that. I mean,
yeah. Yeah, how about top 3 scenes? Can you think of top 3 scenes in the show for you?
Oh. Jeez.
I think
you.
I think Hank's death surely has to be one of them. Hank's death and the phone call that happens after when Walter absolutely loses it. I don't know if I've ever been more shocked at a TV show outside of maybe the Red Wedding from Game of Thrones than that scene.
I think Hank on the toilet scene for me.
Oh, you see, the thing is that Sam kind of spoiled that for me by saying if Hank didn't take a shit, I didn't know the context, but I saw him taking a shit. I'm like, okay, so something's gonna happen.
Yeah. I think the whole train sequence, that huge highlight.
I think the plane crash for me and Freeze from season 2 has to be up there. That's a hell of a scene.
Yeah, and then just the whole sequence where Gus is walking into the retirement home.
Yeah,
and died.
True.
Yeah, those would probably be my top 3.
I think for me, if I have to pick 3, it's Jane's dad doing the plane crash and that whole reveal that the whole time that's what it was. Potentially the other contender for that is the scene with Jane's dad and Walter in the bar, but that's probably more of a low-key scene, but that's one of them. The scene where Gus goes to Mexico, or the scene where Gus flashes back to his past, one of those two is incredible. Oh, the train scene's up there, but I don't know, something about Hank's death, finally understanding where that meme comes from of Walter in shock and falling to the ground.
Yeah,
that was very satisfying to understand that finally. I'm not sure.
It's a good show when you just can spit out different things.
It's impossible. There's so many Jesse Pinkman scenes I could do as well that I haven't even mentioned.
Whenever Jesse's showing pure emotion.
Yeah.
It's right up there.
Like when Jesse does that speech to the therapy room about why can't you just admit that I am a bad man? Or when fucking Hank pulls Walter's tape up and sees the smear campaign. Oh my god! And then when Walter comes home and realizes there's no money in his basement, and he just laughs.
Yeah, actually, that one's brilliant.
Fucking hell!
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. Oh, there's just too many good scenes. It's endless. Yeah. Right. This has been 3.5 hours.
Wow.
I think we've done it.
It's the same length as the cricket I'm going to watch.
That's right. I think we've done a great job. I cannot wait to watch Better Call Saul and El Camino.
Yeah, why?
I'm going to be very sad when I've finished those, though, because I'll have nothing left to watch.
Yeah, you will be very sad.
Yeah. I've heard from friends online who have watched Better Call Saul, who watched the final season, and they said, like, when they got to, like, the last episodes, they were just, like, in absolute agony knowing that it was coming to an end.
Yeah.
And I think I saw somewhere, like, some of the last episodes of Better Call Saul got, like, awards for, like, best TV of the year or whatever. It was, like, huge awards for, like, acting and directing and writing. Like, some of the best TV episodes ever made and all that. So that's exciting.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. Oh. My last message to anyone watching is don't do drugs. Firstly, don't do drugs. Secondly, teachers should get paid more money. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up this mammoth?
Let's wrap it up.
All right. Well, I bid you adieu.
Bye.
A good night and a goodbye.